She hired a PI to follow me, found nothing. Then I hired one to follow her and found everything. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. I found the report in her nightstand drawer. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for the insurance card she'd asked me to grab. Instead, I found 3 months of my life documented by a stranger. Subject departs residence 9:15 a.m. Arrives Marcelo's restaurant 9:47 a.m. Remains on premises until 11:32 p.m. No suspicious activity observed. Day after day, the same routine. My entire life reduced to a private investigator's notes, proving what I'd been telling Patricia for months. I wasn't cheating. I was working. I was building our future. I was being exactly who I'd always been. The invoice was paper-clipped to the back. For $1,800. She'd spent nearly $5,000 trying to catch me doing something I'd never even considered. I sat on the edge of our bed, my bed now, really, since she'd banished me to the guest room 2 months ago, and felt something crack inside my chest. Not my heart breaking. Something else. The foundation of trust that I'd been standing on, trying to save a marriage that was already dead. We'd been together 6 years. Married for 4. I'm a chef, headline cook at Marcelo's, an upscale Italian place downtown. Patricia worked in marketing for a tech startup. We met at a food festival where I was doing a cooking demo. She'd said she loved watching me work, loved my passion for food, loved how focused I became when I was creating something. Apparently, that focus had become suspicious. It started about 14 months ago. Small things at first. She'd check my phone while I was in the shower. Show up at the restaurant unannounced during dinner service, claiming she just wanted to surprise me. She'd interrogate Vanessa, our hostess, asking if I'd been friendly with any female customers. I tried to be patient. I suggested couples therapy. Therapy is for people with problems, she'd said. You're the problem. If you'd just be honest about what you're doing, we wouldn't need therapy. But I wasn't doing anything. That was the insanity of it. I worked 60-hour weeks because I was trying to make head chef. I went to the gym 3 mornings a week. I came home. I loved my wife. Or I had loved her. Past tense. Because sitting there with that PI report in my hands, I realized something had shifted. When Patricia came home that evening, I was waiting at the kitchen table. The report was in front of me. She froze in the doorway, still holding her purse. You went through my things. You went through my entire life, I said, tapping the report. For 3 months. With a professional. She set her purse down slowly. I had to know. Know what, Patricia? The investigator found nothing. Because there's nothing to find. That's what makes it worse. Her voice cracked with something that sounded almost like anguish. You're too perfect. Too clean. No one is this devoted. This, faithful. It's suspicious. I stared at her. You think being a good husband is suspicious? I think you're better at hiding it than I thought. She crossed her arms. Real people make mistakes. Real people have secrets. You're like this robot who goes to work and comes home and never looks at another woman, and it's not natural. What would convince you? I asked. What evidence would possibly prove I'm not cheating? She looked at me for a long moment. Nothing. Because I know the truth even if I can't prove it yet. That's when I saw it. Really saw it. The new perfume she'd been wearing. The way she'd started dressing differently. More attention to her appearance on work days. The secretive phone calls she took in the bathroom. The late nights at the office that had become routine right around the time her accusations started. She was projecting. I felt cold. When did it start? When did what start? Your affair. Her face went white, then red. How dare you accuse me? You hired a PI to follow me because you assume everyone lies like you do, I said quietly. You're so convinced I'm cheating because you are. Get out. Her voice shook. Get out of this house right now. I stood up. I'll pack a bag. But Patricia, we're done. I'm filing for divorce. On what grounds? Your paranoid delusions. I'll let my lawyer handle it. I stayed at Marco's place that night. He was the head chef at Marcelo's, had been mentoring me for 3 years. When I told him everything, he just shook his head. Man, I'm sorry. But if she's accusing you, she's probably guilty. That's Psychology 101. I need to know for sure, I said. I need proof. Marco raised an eyebrow. You thinking what I think you're thinking? She spent $5,000 following me. I can spend 1 month following her. The PI's name was Linda Chun, no relation to Patricia's family. Thankfully, she was in her 50s, professional, with kind eyes that had seen too much human ugliness. I need surveillance on my wife, I told her in her modest office. I think she's having an affair. Linda listened as I explained everything. The accusations, the paranoia, the projection. She didn't judge. 1 month, she said. That's usually enough time to establish a pattern if there is one. And if there isn't, you'll have peace of mind. I nodded. I already know there is one. I just need proof for the divorce. Those 3 weeks were the longest of my life. I moved my stuff out of the house officially, found a small apartment near the restaurant. Patricia didn't fight it, seemed relieved, actually. I threw myself into work, picking up extra shifts, perfecting recipes for the head chef position I'd been chasing. Patricia texted me a few times. Cold messages. We need to talk about the mortgage. Your mail is piling up. Never I miss you. Never I'm sorry. On a Thursday morning, Linda called. Can you come to my office today? I knew from her tone. She'd found something. The photos were spread across her desk like evidence at a crime scene. Patricia and a man I didn't recognize. Outside an Italian restaurant in the Arts District. Walking into a hotel. Sitting in his car in a parking garage, her hand on his face. His name is Dr. Richard Harrison, Linda said. Age 43. Licensed therapist. Has a practice downtown. My stomach dropped. Her therapist? Linda nodded grimly. She's been seeing him professionally for about 18 months. The affair appears to have started approximately 13 months ago, based on the pattern of meetings. They meet 2 to 3 times per week. Sometimes at hotels. Sometimes at his home when his wife is away. His wife. I felt numb. He's married. 2 kids. Linda slid another photo across. This was taken yesterday afternoon. According to her work calendar, which I accessed through public LinkedIn posts, she was supposed to be in a client meeting. Instead, she was in a hotel room with her therapist. I sat there, staring at the evidence of my wife's betrayal, and felt nothing. No rage. No heartbreak. Just a vast, empty relief that I wasn't crazy. I need copies of everything, I said. For my lawyer. And Linda? I need one more thing. The name of the licensing board for therapists in this state. She smiled slightly. I'll email you the information. I didn't call Patricia. I went home, to our house, my house, the one I'd been paying the mortgage on for 4 years, and laid the photos out on the kitchen table. Then I waited. She came home at 8, later than usual. She was laughing on the phone when she walked in, didn't notice me sitting there until she ended the call. Javier? What are you? Then she saw the photos. Her face drained of color. I didn't move, just watched her process what she was seeing. His name is Dr. Richard Harrison, I said calmly. Your therapist. You've been sleeping with him for 13 months. You had me followed? Her voice rose to a shriek. You invaded my privacy, You had me followed for 3 months. I interrupted. I did it for 3 weeks. That's the difference. Yours found nothing. Mine found everything. She grabbed the edge of the table. It's not what it looks like. It looks like you've been sleeping with your married therapist while accusing me of the infidelity you were committing. I stood up. It looks like you projected your guilt onto me for over a year. It looks like you gaslit me, made me feel crazy, when you were the one lying every single day. You drove me to this. Tears started streaming down her face. You're never home. You don't pay attention to me. I needed someone who saw me. I worked 60-hour weeks to build our future, I said. To make head chef so we could buy a bigger house, start a family, have the life you said you wanted. And you thanked me by sleeping with your therapist and trying to catch me doing what you were doing. It just happened, she sobbed. He understood me. He listened. He's a predator who took advantage of a patient. And I'm reporting him to the licensing board tomorrow. I picked up my jacket. I already filed for divorce this morning. You'll be served next week. My lawyer suggests you get one too. Javier, please, she reached for me. I stepped back. Don't. We're done, Patricia. You killed this marriage. You destroyed 6 years. And you did it while blaming me for your crimes. I can't forgive that. I won't. Where will I go? Not my problem anymore. I headed for the door. My lawyer will be in touch about dividing assets. Don't contact me unless it's through legal representation. You can't just leave. I turned back one last time. Yes, I can. That's the difference between us. When I make a commitment, I keep it. When you make one, you break it. We're not the same, Patricia. We never were. The next morning, I submitted a formal complaint to the State Board of Psychology. The evidence was damning. Photos, dates, times, all corroborating an ongoing sexual relationship between Dr. Harrison and his patient. It was an automatic ethics violation, grounds for license revocation. The divorce moved forward. Patricia's lawyer tried to negotiate, claiming she'd been experiencing a mental health crisis and wasn't in her right mind. My lawyer shut that down with the timeline. She'd been lucid enough to hire a PI, accuse me for months, and maintain a coordinated affair. The discovery process was brutal for Patricia. Everything came out. The affair details. The money she'd spent from our joint account on hotels and gifts for Harrison. The lies to her employer about client meetings that were actually hookups. 2 weeks after I filed the complaint, Dr. Harrison was notified of the investigation. Within days, he cut off all contact with Patricia. She called me, hysterical. Richard won't talk to me. He blocked my number. What did you do? I reported him for having sex with his patient, I said coldly. What he should have been reported for a year ago. You ruined his life. He ruined his own life. And his wife's. And his kids. And mine. I just made sure there were consequences. I paused. Don't call me again, Patricia. We have nothing to discuss. She kept calling. I blocked her number. The karma cascade was swift and merciless. Harrison's wife found out about the investigation. These things aren't entirely private in professional communities. She filed for divorce immediately. Patricia's name was in the board complaint, in public documents. The local psychology community, small and interconnected, became aware. 2 months later, the board revoked Harrison's license. Sexual relationships with current patients were grounds for permanent revocation. His practice collapsed. His marriage ended. His professional reputation was destroyed. He blamed Patricia publicly, told colleagues she'd been unhinged, and pursued him inappropriately. Whether that was true or deflection didn't matter. The damage was done. Patricia was labeled a homewrecker, a predator's victim, or accomplice, depending on who was telling the story. Meanwhile, my life began to rebuild. I made head chef at Marcello's. The promotion came with a significant raise and creative control over the menu. I threw myself into work, developing new dishes, mentoring younger cooks the way Marco had mentored me. The divorce settlement was straightforward. I kept the house. I'd paid the down payment and mortgage solo anyway. She took her car and half of our small savings. No alimony since we'd both been working and the marriage was short enough. Patricia's parents called me to apologize. Her father actually cried. We always liked you, Javier. You were good to her. We don't understand what happened. Neither do I, Mr. Chun. But I appreciate you saying that. If you need anything, references, help with the house, you call us, okay? They'd cut Patricia off financially. She'd been receiving monthly help from them for years, supplementing her income. That dried up when they learned what she'd done. For months after I moved out, I heard through mutual friends that Patricia had been fired from her marketing job. Too much personal drama bleeding into work, apparently. There'd been an incident where she'd broken down crying in a client meeting. She found work through a temp agency, moved from our spacious house to a studio apartment across town. Most of our friends quietly took sides, mine. The evidence was too clear, the betrayal too calculated. She tried to reach out. Texts that I deleted without reading. Emails that went to spam. A letter delivered to Marcello's that Marco intercepted and handed to me with a concerned look. You want to read this? No. Throw it away. You got it, chef. 6 months after the divorce was filed, I had dinner with some investors interested in backing a restaurant concept I'd been developing. A small place, intimate, focused on seasonal ingredients and elevated comfort food. I'd been saving money aggressively, rebuilding my life with intention. They loved the pitch. By the end of the night, I had commitments for 2/3 of the capital I needed. I was going to open my own restaurant. 8 months after I found that PI report, Patricia's mother called. Javier, I know you asked not to be contacted, but, Mrs. Chun, I've moved on. I'm sorry, but Patricia is really struggling. She lost her job. Her apartment is barely livable. She's isolated. I'm sorry to hear that. I kept my voice neutral. But those are consequences of her choices. She made a mistake. With respect, she didn't make a mistake. She made choices. Every day for over a year. She chose to lie to me. She chose to sleep with her therapist. She chose to accuse me of her own sins. Those weren't mistakes. They were decisions. Mrs. Chun was quiet for a moment. You always were kind to her. Exactly. And she threw it away. I hope she finds peace, but I can't help her find it. I'm focused on my own life now. She talks about you constantly. Says she made the worst mistake of her life. Then she should learn from it. But not with me. Please don't call again, Mrs. Chun. I mean that respectfully, but I need you to respect my boundaries. She sighed. I understand. Good luck with everything, Javier. You deserved better. Thank you. So did your daughter. She just couldn't see it. 10 months after everything fell apart, my restaurant was days from opening. We'd secured a perfect location in a revitalized neighborhood, built out a beautiful space with exposed brick and warm lighting, hired a small but talented staff. I'd named it Solace. Marco was my silent partner and advisor. Vanessa from Marcelo's came on as general manager. I was cooking again, really cooking, not just executing someone else's vision. I was happy. Then Patricia showed up at Marcelo's during a Saturday dinner service. Vanessa found me in the kitchen. Javier, I'm sorry, but Patricia is here. In the dining room. She's asking for you. I wiped my hands on my apron. Tell her I'm busy and she needs to leave. I did. She's refusing. Says she'll wait all night. Marco looked up from his station. Want me to handle it? No. I'll deal with it. I untied my apron. This ends tonight. She was sitting at the bar, nursing a glass of wine she clearly couldn't afford. She'd lost weight. Dark circles under her eyes. Her clothes were clean but worn, not the designer pieces she used to favor. Patricia. I stayed standing, kept my distance. You need to leave. Javier, please. Her voice cracked. Just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. I'm in the middle of dinner service. I don't have 5 minutes. I've changed. I'm not that person anymore. Tears started falling. I was sick. I was in a dark place. I'm in therapy now, real therapy, working on myself. I'm glad you're getting help. I kept my tone neutral, professional. That's important. But it doesn't change anything between us. We spent 6 years together. Her voice rose. Customers were starting to stare. You can't just erase that. You did that. Not me. I gestured toward the door. You need to go. Now. I still love you. She was crying openly now, mascara running down her face. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm begging you. Marco. I didn't take my eyes off Patricia. Marco appeared at my shoulder immediately. Please help Miss Chin to her car. No, wait. Javier, please. She grabbed my arm. I pulled back. Patricia, you're making a scene. In my workplace. In front of customers. This is harassment. I kept my voice low but firm. You need to leave, or I will call the police. You can't do this to me. She was borderline hysterical now. After everything we had, after everything you destroyed, I corrected. Marco, please. Marco gently but firmly guided her toward the exit. She resisted, still crying, still calling my name. Vanessa held the door open. The entire restaurant was watching. When she was finally outside, I turned to the dining room. I apologize for the disturbance. Your meals tonight are on the house. There was a smattering of applause. Someone called out, Good for you, chef. I went back to the kitchen and finished the service. My hands were shaking slightly, but I didn't let it affect my work. That night, I blocked her on every remaining platform. Changed my phone number. Installed a security camera at my apartment. She sent letters. I returned them unopened. She sent gifts to my apartment, found my address somehow. I refused delivery. She was trying to rewrite history, to make herself the victim of her own choices. I wasn't participating. The divorce was finalized 11 months after I found that PI report. We met at the courthouse for the final hearing, a formality to sign the last documents. Patricia arrived looking defeated. Cheaper clothes. Hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She'd aged years in less than one. I arrived in a tailored suit, confident, accompanied by my lawyer. I'd been working out consistently, eating well, sleeping better than I had in years. I looked good and I knew it. We waited in the hallway outside the courtroom. I was checking emails on my phone, details about Solace's opening night, when she approached. Javier. Her voice was small. You look good. Really good. I glanced up. Patricia. I've been working on myself. New therapist, medication, reflecting on everything I did wrong. That's good. I returned to my phone. Everyone should work on themselves. The person who did those things, that wasn't really me. I looked at her fully then. That was you, Patricia. The real you under pressure. The you that made choices every day for over a year. You don't get to distance yourself from that. Tears welled in her eyes. Can we talk? After this? Just coffee? I need closure. We spent 6 years together. We spent 6 years together. I agreed. And you spent one of those years lying to my face while sleeping with your therapist and accusing me of your sins. Our lawyers can communicate if needed. I have nothing to say to you. I still love you. Her voice broke. I know I don't deserve. You don't love me. I cut her off. Not unkindly, just stating fact. You love the stability I provided. The good guy who forgave your moods and supported your career. That person doesn't exist anymore. You killed him when you betrayed him. Please, Javier. I'm drowning. I lost everything. And I'm sorry you're struggling. I genuinely am. I held her gaze. But I can't be your life raft. I'm not responsible for saving you from yourself. I barely saved myself from you. My lawyer appeared in the doorway. They're ready for us. The hearing took 15 minutes. The judge reviewed the settlement, confirmed we both agreed to terms, signed the decree. It was done. Outside the courthouse, Patricia tried one more time. Javier, wait. I kept walking to my car. Javier, please. I didn't turn around. Got in my car. Drove away. In my rearview mirror, I saw her standing on the courthouse steps, alone. I felt nothing. 2 weeks later, Solace had its opening night. The dining room was packed. Friends, family, investors, food critics, people who'd heard the buzz and wanted to experience it firsthand. My parents flew in from Arizona. They were so proud they kept tearing up. Marco was there with his wife, beaming like he'd opened the place himself. Vanessa ran the front of house like a general commanding troops. I was in the kitchen, in my element, creating. During a brief lull, I stepped outside the back door for air. The night was cool, clear. I could hear laughter and conversation drifting from the dining room. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Then figured it might be a vendor. Hello. Solace Restaurant. How can I help you? Vanessa's voice. Why are you? Patricia called the main line asking to speak to you. I wanted to intercept. Vanessa sounded apologetic. I told her you weren't available and she's not welcome to call again. Thank you, Vanessa. She asked if she could make a reservation. For tomorrow. What did you say? I told her we're fully booked for the next 2 months. Vanessa paused. Then I put a note in our system. Patricia Chun, do not accept reservations. Was that okay? I smiled. That was perfect. Thank you for protecting the space. Always, chef. I hung up and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, Patricia was trying to insert herself back into my life, unable to accept that she was no longer part of it. But I was here, in my own restaurant, surrounded by people who supported me, creating food that made people happy, building something real and good and entirely mine. She tried to destroy me with her accusations, her paranoia, her betrayal. Instead, she'd freed me to become someone stronger. I went back inside. There was a ticket up, 2 appetizers, one with a modification. I got to work. A food critic from the city's major paper was in the dining room. She'd ordered the seasonal risotto, my signature dish. When her plate came back empty, Vanessa brought me the comment card she'd filled out. Transcendent. Chef Morales is a talent to watch. The review would run in Sunday's paper. It would be glowing. It would establish Solace as a destination. I'd made it. Despite everything. Because of everything. That night, after the last customer left and the kitchen was clean, I sat at the bar with Marco and Vanessa, sharing a bottle of wine. To new beginnings, Marco raised his glass. To choosing yourself, Vanessa added. I clinked glasses with them both. To being free. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. I silenced it without looking. Patricia could call 1,000 times. It wouldn't change anything. I'd moved on. Completely. She was a closed chapter in a book I'd finished reading. And I was writing a new story entirely. One where I was the hero. Where I chose my own happiness. Where I built something beautiful from the ashes of what she'd burned down. She'd hired a PI to catch me in a lie that didn't exist. I'd hired one to uncover the truth she'd been hiding. We'd both found exactly what we were looking for. The difference was, I'd used that truth to set myself free. And she was still trapped in the prison of her own making, banging on the bars, begging to be let back into a life that no longer had room for her. I finished my wine, said goodnight to my friends, and drove home to my apartment. Tomorrow, Solace would open for lunch service. We had a full book of reservations. A waiting list 2 weeks deep. Tomorrow, I'd create something beautiful. Tonight, I'd sleep soundly for the first time in 2 years. Because I finally understood, the investigation was never about finding evidence of betrayal. It was about finding the evidence I needed to save myself. And I had. Mission accomplished. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.
My name is Jennifer Aniston, 31 years old, an interior architect living in Boulder, Colorado. The story I'm about to tell doesn't begin with some dramatic event. It started on what seemed like an ordinary Thanksgiving evening, where everyone laughed and chatted around the dinner table, until my mother set down the pumpkin pie and said those words. Sometimes, I wish Ellie was our only child. The whole table burst into laughter except me. I didn't get angry, I didn't cry. I just put my fork down and quietly said, "Well, Mom, you might just get that wish sooner than you think." They thought I was joking. But a week later, that sentence became reality and their perfect little world started to crumble, piece by piece. Have you ever felt like the outsider in your own family? Tell me where you're watching this from so I'll know that maybe, just maybe, we're not alone in this. That day, Colorado was so cold the air itself seemed to freeze into white mist. Inside the suburban house in Fort Collins, the scent of roasted turkey mixed with cinnamon and nutmeg drifted through the dining room. Warm yellow light glowed over the long wooden table, where the hand-embroidered tablecloth my mother had treasured for decades was once again brought out for Thanksgiving. I sat at the far left end of the table, the usual spot no one ever claimed, as if that seat existed for the person present enough to be polite, but never meant to be the center. Ellie, my younger sister, sat across from me, her golden curls perfectly styled, wearing a cream wool dress that framed her slender figure. She had just returned from Los Angeles after taking some time off to focus on her novel. A phrase my mother loved to repeat with pride, as if our family housed a literary icon. My father, Michael, sat at the head of the table, nodding and smiling while Mom retold the story about Ellie's small magazine interview in California. I stayed still, quietly slicing my turkey, smiling at the right moments, nodding at the right cues, and staying silent in all the right ways. When dessert was brought out, my mother placed the pumpkin pie on the table, the dish she always took the most pride in. "Family recipe," she would say, though in reality it came from the shop down the street with a bit of whipped cream added for a homemade touch. She poured the wine, lifted her glass, her voice a little hoarse with excitement. "I just want to say how grateful I am this year. For Ellie, for her creativity, her heart, her courage to chase her dreams." She glanced at me, her eyes flickering as if trying to remember my name, then added awkwardly, "And for Jennifer, of course, for always being so reliable." I smiled and said thank you. Reliable, a word that sounds like praise, but in our family meant I was good at standing still and enduring. Then she cut the pie, served the slices, and as always began one of her half-joke, half-truth comments. "You know," she said lightly, her voice even, "sometimes I wish Ellie was our only child. Life would be so much simpler." The words rang out over the clinking of silverware and the sound of wine being poured into glasses. A brief silence passed, then the whole table burst into laughter. Ellie laughed the loudest, her voice high and clear like crystal glasses colliding. "Don't worry, Mom," she said, half joking, half not, "we love her anyway." My father shook his head, chuckling, and patted my mother's hand. "Diane, don't start." My mother only shrugged, her eyes glinting with that strange delight, the kind of joy someone feels when they've spoken out loud what they've always thought, and no one dares to object. I said nothing. I simply set my fork down slowly. Inside, a cold, hollow space opened, not pain, but the strange quiet of an old wound being touched again. I looked around the table. The people I loved, the ones I had sent money to help fix their roof last year, the ones for whom I had bought Ellie a new laptop so she could write her stories. All of them were laughing. And me, the one who had spent her whole life trying to prove she was worthy, sat there like a stranger in her own family. I took a sip of water, then lifted my head, my voice low but clear. Well, Mom, you might just get that wish sooner than you think. The air in the room dropped instantly. Laughter died out as if someone had cut the sound. My mother froze, the knife poised midair above the pie. Ellie looked at me, her mouth still curved but her eyes flickering. My father cleared his throat, ready to change the subject, but no one picked it up. Only the ticking of the wall clock counted slowly in a room thick with cinnamon and silence. I didn't need to say anything else. In my mind, the pieces finally clicked into place. The quiet dinners, the forgotten birthdays, the jokes that sliced into me while I forced myself to laugh them off. I understood now that what they had just said wasn't a joke. It was the truth they had carried for years, wrapped in wine and laughter. And in that moment, I knew I was finished with all of it. I smiled softly, stood up, cleared my plate, and said quietly, "Thank you for dinner. The pie was great." My voice was steady, no trembling, no anger, only one thing remained: clarity. As I stepped out of that house, snow had begun to fall. The porch light glowed against the thin sheet of first snow, casting a faint reflection across my car window. I sat behind the wheel, my hands resting on it, listening to the wind rush through the trees and thinking, if they truly wanted a life without me, then maybe it was time to let them have it. And in the freezing breath of that Colorado winter night, I felt it clearly: something in me had ended. And something else, stronger, had just begun. I drove out of Fort Collins as the clock on the dashboard read 11:47 p.m. Snow was falling thick, covering the road in white, and the cold wind blew across the mountains like the long exhale of winter. My headlights cut through the fog, revealing swirls of snow spinning in the air before disappearing again, like every effort I had made over the last 31 years appearing, glimmering for a moment, then vanishing into silence. The road back to Boulder was so familiar I could have driven it with my eyes closed, but tonight everything felt different. Every curve, every sign, every dark stretch of highway felt as though I were driving through the years of my own past, the years I spent trying to prove my worth to people who never really wanted to see it. The steady rhythm of the wipers, the crunch of the tires on snow, and the soft music on the radio blended into a mournful song I had never heard before. I didn't cry. What I felt now wasn't the sharp pain I had grown used to, but a deep emptiness, as if someone had carved out a hollow space in my chest and left it to freeze over. I thought of my mother Diane and the way she had looked at me at a family wedding last year when I wore a simple navy blue dress. She glanced at me and said loudly enough for a few people nearby to hear, "Sweetheart, next time pick something a little more expensive, this one looks cheap." I remembered forcing a smile, joking back, "I like simplicity, Mom." But later that night, looking at the group photos, I saw her eyes on Ellie, praising her for being elegant and sophisticated. I still remember that tightness in my throat, not from embarrassment, but from realizing that no matter how hard I tried, in my mother's eyes, I would always just be the faded shadow standing next to the child she was truly proud of. Then I thought of my father, a quiet, steady man who could wound someone with a single offhand remark. When I was 26, after my firm won the bid to design the interiors of a major hotel in Denver, I called home with the news, hoping to hear him say, "Well done, I'm proud of you." But he was silent for a few seconds and then said, "That's good. But Ellie has more talent than you. She writes so well. If she tries, she'll probably be famous soon." The words were as light as air, yet I remember standing frozen in the middle of my office, the phone still in my hand, my eyes staring out the glass window at the Denver skyline blazing bright against the night. The lights were dazzling, but not enough to erase the smallness spreading through my chest. I also remembered the time Ellie used my credit card to buy a MacBook. When the bank sent the bill, I thought it was a system error. I called to ask, and Ellie said breezily, "Oh, you must have sent me that card by mistake before, sorry." I thought it was mine. I knew it was a lie, but my mother stepped in immediately. "Let it go, Jennifer. Your sister didn't mean it. She needs a laptop to write." So I stayed silent again, paid the bill myself, and told myself that one day they would realize I was always the one holding everything together. But sitting here in my car, In the middle of this white snow night, I understood that day would never come. I had spent my entire life trying to make them proud when they had never intended to be proud of me. I used to think I was a victim of a toxic family, but tonight I realized I was also at fault because I chose to stay. I chose silence when I was insulted, chose to help when I was taken advantage of, chose to stay when I should have left. I had taught them that I would always endure, that I was the place they could unload their burdens and walk away without looking back. I had turned myself into the shadow they needed, and when that shadow became too obedient, they forgot it was also a human being. I turned on the heater, glanced at the rearview mirror, and saw my own reflection blurred in the glow of the streetlights. I barely recognized the woman staring back at me anymore, a tired face, empty eyes, lips pressed tight as if holding back a lifetime of unsaid words. And then, I laughed. A laugh that was both sad and strangely light. Because at last, I understood. They had said, "We wish Ellie was our only child," but in truth, that no longer mattered. From this moment on, I would make that wish real. They wanted a life without me? Fine, they would have it. As I merged onto the highway toward Boulder, the snow came down heavier. The sky was pitch black, the only light a faint glow from my headlights reflecting off the white ice. Slowly, I spoke aloud, my voice echoing in the small cabin of the car. If they want me to disappear, I'll disappear. But not because I lost. I pulled into a gas station and stepped out. The air sliced against my skin like a blade. Tilting my head back, I watched the snow fall and melt on my hands, leaving tiny trails of water. For the first time in my life, I felt peace in the cold. I no longer wanted to prove anything. No longer wanted to be the good daughter, the sacrificing sister, the reliable woman. I just wanted to be myself, even if that meant walking away from everything. I returned to Boulder through that white snow night with a completely different state of mind. The next morning, as the sun crept through the window of my apartment, I already knew what I had to do. No more circles. No more, just this one time. I sat at the kitchen table, poured myself a black coffee, and watched the steam rise from the ceramic mug. In the soft hum of the heater, I opened my laptop and began typing out each transfer with an icy calm. Every click of the mouse was a snip of the scissors cutting through the cord that had tied me to that family. First came the joint account I had been depositing money into every month to support my parents. Since the age of 25, I had been transferring a third of my income into it, believing I was fulfilling my duty. But now, staring at the numbers on the screen, the amount not small at all, enough for them to live comfortably if they managed it wisely, I felt a strange sadness. Not regret, but the sudden realization that all these years, I had never once asked myself if I even wanted to do it. I withdrew the entire balance back into my personal account, clicked confirm, and canceled the automatic transfers. A notification appeared. Transfer completed. I inhaled deeply, feeling as though I had just closed the first door. Next was the home repair loan I had co-signed. Last year, my parents' old roof had leaked badly after a storm. Their credit score wasn't high enough for a loan, so I had signed on so they would be approved for the repairs. I opened my email, found the contract, then called the company. A woman's voice came through the phone. "Mrs. Aniston, you want to cancel the guarantee? The final disbursement hasn't been processed yet." I answered calmly, "Yes. I'm no longer responsible for that loan. From now on, please work directly with the homeowners." She hesitated for a moment, then confirmed. When I hung up, my heart was pounding not with fear, but with the feeling of having loosened yet another cord around my neck. The same with my mother's car. Last year, she said her old one had a bad engine and wasn't safe to drive. I bought her a new SUV, put it under my name, and lent it to her so she could use my insurance and pay lower premiums. Now I drafted a letter to the insurance company, transferring the legal ownership back to myself and requesting the cancellation of the old policy at the end of the month. I wrote the letter carefully, without a single word of reproach, just cold, legal language. Each word was an assertion. From today on, I'm taking back what's mine, no longer lending unconditionally. I didn't do all of this in a single day. Each morning when I woke up, I loosened one more link in the chain. I cleared out my old apartment in Boulder, where I had lived for 6 years, piece by piece, memory by memory. I listed it for sale, paid off the bank loan, and used what was left to search for someplace entirely new. Telluride appeared on my computer screen as I scrolled a small town tucked deep in the mountains of southwest Colorado, nearly 6 hours from Fort Collins. The photos showed snow-blanketing wooden cabins, narrow roads leading up the ridges, sunlight spilling through the pine trees, everything like an invitation. There, no one would know who I was. No one would know me as Ellie's sister. I could just be Jennifer, a person without burdens, without labels. I rented a small wooden cabin on a hillside overlooking the valley. Inside, it was simple but warm. Pinewood walls, wide windows, a tiny kitchen, a stone fireplace. I imagined myself making coffee there in the mornings, watching snow fall outside the window. The thought filled me with a strange peace. I began packing my things, the blueprints, the architecture books, the few photographs I actually liked. I left behind the false gifts, the keepsakes that carried the weight of being overlooked. Each box sealed was another chapter of my life closing. The night before leaving Boulder, I opened my email and wrote a single line to my parents. No explanations, no defenses, no anger. Just a message as cold as ice. You wished for a life without me. Congratulations. Starting today, it's yours. I stared at the words on the screen, my hand resting on the mouse. I remembered every time I'd bowed my head, every transfer I'd made, every smile I'd forced. They rose and faded like steam on glass. Then I clicked, send. A soft sound chimed. The message was gone. I shut the laptop and stood up. Outside the window, the snow was falling thicker now, blanketing the quiet street like a white quilt. I stepped out onto the balcony and took a deep breath. The icy air rushed into my lungs, but for the first time, it felt like I was inhaling freedom. I knew tomorrow wouldn't be easy. They would call, they would text, they would try every way they could to pull me back. But this time, I wasn't going back. I had taken my voice back. I had made their wish come true, not to punish them, but to save myself. And in the cold of that last night in Boulder, I understood this wasn't an ending at all, but the beginning of another life, a life I would build with my own hands, no longer as a shadow beside Ellie, no longer as the sister who carries everything. Just Jennifer, a free woman, at last. A week after I sent the email, the first signs of chaos began to show, not where I was living now, but where I had left. I knew because my phone wouldn't stop vibrating, though I never picked up. My mother's number, then my father's, then unknown numbers. I knew Ellie must have borrowed from someone else. I watched the calls flash across the screen and let them sink into silence. I no longer needed to explain. Every word I had ever spoken, every plea, every effort to prove myself had been thrown out the window by them long ago. Now they would have to live with the wish they had spoken aloud, a life without me. On Monday morning, I received an automatic email from the bank, a copy of the old statement for the account I'd once shared with my parents to help them cover the monthly mortgage. This time, a red line stood out. Automatic payment failed, insufficient funds. I let out a small laugh, not out of glee, but because it was exactly as I'd predicted. Every month, I had quietly topped off the shortfall because their retirement income wasn't enough to cover the bills. Now that mortgage had no one standing behind it. The first shield had fallen. I could almost picture my mother panicking when the bank called, her voice trembling at the thought of losing the family home I had been helping to sustain all these years. 3 days later, another email arrived, this time from the insurance company. Since I had canceled the policy, the SUV my mother drove was no longer legally insured. I imagined she kept driving as usual until one cold afternoon when a police officer pulled her over for a routine check. I could see it so clearly, her in a heavy winter coat, hands trembling as she handed over the papers and received a ticket for driving without valid insurance. My mother, who had always prided herself on being the perfect household manager, had probably never imagined such a moment. Then came Ellie's turn. She called in the middle of the night, leaving a voicemail nearly 4 minutes long. I listened to it once just to confirm that she was still exactly who she'd always been. Confident, blaming, and dramatic. "You're so petty, Jennifer. I only wanted to borrow a little money to open my writing studio, but the bank said they couldn't approve it because you withdrew your guarantee. Do you know what that's done to me? Mom's been crying all day. Do you want to see us fall apart? Fine, you win. You've always been the cold one." I listened to that voice, a mix of anger and pleading, and realized I felt nothing. No pity, no fury, just absolute stillness. My father was next. He called repeatedly, leaving short messages, sometimes commanding, sometimes pleading. "Call me back. This has gone too far. Your mother's falling apart, please come home. Stop acting like a child, Jennifer." Each word echoed in my head, and all I could think was, if only he knew how grown up I became the moment they kept treating me like a child, maybe he wouldn't have said that. I didn't delete the messages, I simply turned off notifications. Every missed call, every unheard voicemail became another brick in the wall of freedom I was building, the wall I had never dared to construct before. In Telluride, my life began to find its rhythm. Each morning, I woke early and opened the window to breathe in the crisp mountain air. The sunlight glistened on the snow, so bright it made my eyes squint. I bought a small wooden table and placed it by the window where I could work on freelance design projects. When I drew, time seemed to stop. No more ringing phones, no more voices filled with guilt or blame, just the sound of a pencil gliding across paper and the steady beat of my heart. I learned to listen to the silence, the sound I once feared, but which had now become the soundtrack of my rebirth. Meanwhile, in Fort Collins, the dominoes began to fall. I heard bits of news through my mother's old friend, Helen, who sent me an email asking, "Are you all right, Jennifer? Your mom doesn't look well. The house is under pressure from the bank, and Ellie's been gone for a few days. Your dad looks exhausted." I read the message quietly, then replied with just one line. "Thank you for checking on me, I'm fine." I didn't ask for more details because I already knew what was happening. My mother was likely calling me every day, blaming me for destroying the family, never realizing that I had simply stopped playing the role of their rescuer. They weren't falling apart because I left, they were falling apart because they never learned how to stand without someone holding them up. One evening, as I sat by the fireplace, my phone buzzed again. A new message from my mother. "Jennifer, please, come back. I know I said things I shouldn't have. Your father isn't eating, Ellie is falling apart. We need you. Stop acting like a child, please." I read that message over and over, word by word. Stop acting like a child. How ironic. They called me childish for doing the one thing an adult must eventually do: set boundaries. I didn't reply. I switched off my phone, set it on the table, and stepped out onto the porch. The night was dark, snow falling slowly, the moonlight turning the pine forest into liquid silver. I pulled on a wool sweater and sat down on the wooden chair, gazing up at the sky. No more anger, no more pain. Only stillness, the very thing I had once mistaken for loneliness but now recognized as the sign of freedom. I realized some lives only truly begin after you let everything collapse without rushing to save it. Somewhere out there, beyond the Colorado mountains, I knew Fort Collins was descending into chaos. And here I was, in my small cabin, learning how to breathe again. Every unanswered ring was a deeper breath. Every deleted email was a step closer to the life I had chosen. And in that silence, I understood something profound. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't making someone else hurt, it's living so peacefully that their pain can no longer reach you. On my first morning in Telluride, I woke before the sun rose above the snow-covered peaks. The air was sharp and cold, slipping through the cracks of the window frame, carrying the faint scent of pine, the forest's quiet way of saying welcome. I opened the window and looked out at the valley below, still asleep beneath a layer of mist. I could hear the steady tapping of a woodpecker on an old tree, and somewhere in the distance, the faint hum of a snowmobile tracing a thin line across the frozen ground. My cabin was small, but everything in it felt just right. A wooden table by the window, a low bookshelf propped up by two flat stones, a tiny kitchen that stayed warm thanks to the stone fireplace, and a hand-woven rug I'd found at a thrift store in town. I brewed a cup of coffee, the rich aroma rising in the air, and suddenly felt something unfamiliar being in a place where no one knew my past, where no one expected me to save them, where my worth wasn't measured by the money I sent. I pulled out a chair and opened my laptop. The screen lit up with my teaching schedule. 3 basic studio classes for first-year architecture students from a community college in Denver, and a private workshop I had just launched on an online platform. I greeted them with a calm good morning and guided them through sketching shapes by hand before moving to digital tools, reminding them to find the natural light in their room before switching on lamps because real light will teach you more about space than any textbook ever could. Faces filled the small squares on my screen, curious, clumsy, but bright-eyed. When they held up their sketches to the webcam, I didn't just see lines and angles. I saw what architecture had always taught me, that inside every structure, there's a story waiting to be heard. During my lunch break, I turned to the old design drafts I had once stuffed into the bottom of a drawer, sketches I'd abandoned with excuses like no time or no budget, when in truth, I just hadn't been brave enough to make time for myself. I spread the paper across the table, sharpened the tip of my 2B pencil, and drew the horizon line of a single-story house opening toward a sloping hillside. I added a beam of light streaming from a skylight into the kitchen, imagining the warmth of afternoon sunlight spilling across the dining table, a space free from words that made anyone shrink. With every line I traced, my breathing grew lighter, as though the pencil itself was carving a hidden passage into a chest that hadn't taken a deep breath in years. Dusk came quickly in the mountains. When I stepped outside to take out the trash, I noticed the cabin next door flickering to life with a warm yellow glow. The door was half open, and a man with tousled brown hair and a thick down jacket was backing out carefully, cradling a massive tripod against his chest, a camera backpack bulging behind him. He fumbled and nearly tripped on the steps. I laughed softly, stepping over just in time to catch the edge of the tripod before it hit the porch. "Thanks," he exhaled, his cheeks flushed red from the cold, his voice deep and steady. "I'm Eric. Just rented this place for the month. I'm here to photograph the San Juan Range in winter." I introduced myself, gesturing toward the pine forest, rambling a few words about the cliff at the end of the trail where the sunset view was spectacular. He smiled. "I'm chasing the blue light before it disappears. It's funny, I used to think snow was just one color. Turns out it's a whole palette if you stand still long enough to see it." That line caught my attention. Someone willing to stand still long enough, that wasn't something you heard often in a world addicted to hurry. In the days that followed, we exchanged simple greetings across the porch. He was always leaving early, returning late, a tripod slung over his shoulder, while I stayed tangled in lesson plans and half-finished drawings. On Wednesday night, as the wind whistled through the gutters like a flute and the power flickered out across the area, I was feeding logs into the fire when I heard a gentle knock. Eric stood at the door, holding a kettle of boiling water and a packet of cocoa. "The power's out at my place too," he said with a grin. "I've got a camping stove, thought you might want a warm drink." We sat by the fireplace, the flames dancing against the stone, the scent of chocolate rich in the air, and the conversation found its own rhythm. Eric told me he was born in New Mexico, raised by his mother, and grew up with an old film camera she'd bought from a flea market. His biological father, he said, was nothing more than a name on a birth certificate. "I used to wait for him at vague meeting spots all through my childhood," Eric said, his eyes fixed on the fire. "Every time he didn't show up, my mom would teach me something. You can photograph a shadow that stretches as far as you want, but don't mistake it for a real person." I stayed quiet for a long while, feeling that sentence unlock a hidden drawer inside me. Then, as if drawn by a gentle pull, I began to tell him about Fort Collins, about the long dinner table, the store-bought pumpkin pie my mother gave. A touch of soul, and the words, "We wish Ellie was our only child." I didn't dramatize it or hold anything back. I spoke the way someone might place stones carefully, one by one, to rebuild a path that was once lost. Eric didn't interrupt. He only nodded, asking short questions just enough to let me know I was being truly heard. Where was your body in that moment? How long did you keep trying? Have you forgiven yourself for staying? I answered each one, saying aloud for the first time things I'd only ever thought during late-night drives through the snow. When I finished, the warmth in my face seemed to fade, replaced by a strange lightness, as if the slope I had been climbing my whole life had suddenly softened. I looked around the cabin, nothing had changed. The fire still burned, the mugs of cocoa still steamed, yet somehow the air felt larger by half a breath. In the days that followed, Eric invited me on short walks through the edge of the forest. He showed me how he waited for light, setting up the camera early, framing the shot, and then sitting still until the sky shifted tone in a way most eyes would never notice. Light is the first storyteller, he said. Photography is just choosing where to pause the story and keep a piece for yourself. I laughed and said architecture was the same. I just arranged the letters for light to pass through. We walked in silence for a long stretch, listening to snow fall soundlessly and the tap of a bird somewhere in the trees, like punctuation in a quiet sentence. With him, I didn't have to fill the silence to make someone comfortable. Silence was allowed to simply be silence. One evening, as the light faded, Eric invited me over to his cabin to see the photos he had just developed. The walls were lined with small frames, the jagged ridges of a mountain where the clouds had opened a gap, the shadows of pine trees stretching across a frozen lake like someone's outstretched arms, a ripple in the snow where the wind had carved a wave. I stood for a long time before one photograph of a small wooden house crouched in the middle of a vast white landscape. Tiny bird tracks dotted the roof, and a warm yellow glow filled its lone window like the eye of someone who stayed awake late. That house reminds me that there are still things in this world that stand firm, even when the wind changes, he said. I swallowed a strange gratitude, because it felt as though he had just spoken for me for my little cabin. That night, I sat at my desk and reopened the sketch titled A House for One. For the first time, I drew it as if it were meant for me. A window framing the western pines, a skylight above the kitchen to let the rain play its music, a reading nook just big enough for one person and an imaginary cat. In tiny letters, I wrote a note at the corner. Safe space where silence doesn't need permission. On some evenings, after long hours of teaching that left my throat dry, I would walk to the edge of the hill, breathe in the scent of pine, and listen to the faint cracking of distant ice, a soft reminder that everything is shifting, slowly but surely. My phone still buzzed now and then with a stray call or two. I kept it on silent, face down, like placing the final stone to block an old stream. From that distance, I could see a truth that no longer hurt. I no longer belonged to the place I had left. And strangely, the sadness that came with that realization felt light, almost tender. One evening, as we carried firewood inside before a snowstorm, Eric asked, without looking at me, "Do you think you'll ever go back?" I shook my head. "I'll go back to my own version of me, the one I abandoned for too long. As for them, probably not." He said nothing, only placed another log into the fire. In the crackle and pop of burning wood, I suddenly saw a truth I had never named before. Sometimes, family isn't where you were born, it's where you are finally seen. In Telluride, among the snow and the pines, between the tapping of woodpeckers and the steady breathing of a neighbor who knew how to wait for light, I began, for the first time, to feel myself taking shape. No longer a shadow of anyone. I stopped counting how many times they called, stopped measuring how often I had helped. Each morning I opened my eyes was a blank page. Each night I closed my door was a soft line written across it. Today, I lived on my own terms. And within that simplicity, a quiet rebirth was taking place, not loud, not performative, not in need of validation like an underground spring searching for a way out beneath the frozen ground. Slow, patient, and certain. 3 months passed since the day I left Fort Collins. Winter had faded, and the snow in Telluride was melting slowly, revealing the first patches of green grass beyond my cabin porch. My days found a calm, gentle rhythm, teaching in the morning, sketching in the afternoon, sharing tea and music with Eric at night. I no longer measured time through messages or bills, but through the changing light across the pines, pale green in the morning, golden at noon, violet gray by dusk. I almost forgot that somewhere out there, Fort Collins still existed with the people who once called me the extra child. But one March morning, as I was reviewing a student's architectural draft, a knock at the door startled me. The mail carrier stood there in a brown coat, holding a thick envelope stamped with the seal of a law office. I signed for it, a flicker of unease running through me, and opened it right there at the table. Inside was a formal letter, the tone rigid, full of legal phrasing. Dear Mrs. Jennifer Aniston, we represent Mountain West Credit Union. Recently, a mortgage application was submitted under your name, bearing a signature that matches the records we have on file. However, during verification, we discovered the applicant was Mrs. Diane Aniston, your mother. To ensure credit security and prevent fraud, please confirm whether you authorized this application. I froze. My hands trembled as I reached the last line. If we do not receive your authorization, the bank will proceed with an investigation into identity fraud. My mother. The woman who used to say, "We're family, don't keep score." The one who accused me of acting like a child when I cut contact. She had used my name, my signature, to borrow money to save the house, the very house whose mortgage I had quietly been covering for years. I sat down, my heart pounding. The rational part of me wanted to call a lawyer immediately, but emotionally, there was only a strange emptiness. I had thought I was used to betrayal, but when it came from the person who once sang me to sleep, it still pierced like the first time. I wasn't angry anymore. I only felt sorrow for a mother who chose deceit over humility, manipulation over simply learning how to apologize. I called my attorney in Denver and explained the situation. His voice was calm. You need to submit a formal statement disclaiming responsibility right away. This is a serious offense, and the bank may press charges if it isn't clarified. I heard myself respond, I understand, please go ahead. I don't want to prosecute them, I just want them to know I won't shield them anymore. When I hung up, I exhaled deeply. Outside, the pine trees swayed in the wind, their peace absurd against the storm now raging in Fort Collins. 2 days later, Eric placed a printed page on my table, something a friend had sent him. It was a social media post from Ellie, shared publicly on her account with over 3,000 followers. The first line, written in all caps, read, "My sister abandoned our family for money." Below it was a long string of half-truths and fabrications, that I had left my parents drowning in debt, that I cut off contact because I refused to help with a small amount, that I chose money over love. There was even an old photo of the two of us in the backyard, with Ellie's caption beneath it. Sometimes blood doesn't mean family. I read every word, not quickly, not avoiding. Beneath the post were hundreds of comments, split down the middle. Some offered sympathy, others piled on. But a few began to ask questions. If she was really that cold, how come your family lived so comfortably before? I didn't react. But in the small world of Fort Collins, the stories spread like wildfire. Old neighbors, high school classmates, they started piecing together the fragments they remembered. They recalled how I used to come home early every year to help my mother prepare for Thanksgiving, how my mother's new car had once been registered under my name, how I was the one who co-signed when they repaired their roof. All the truths that had long been buried under the illusion of family love began to surface, one by one. An old friend messaged me. People are talking about your mom at the cafe near your old house. They said she used your name to take out a loan. Everyone's shocked. I didn't reply. I simply closed my phone. I didn't need to defend myself anymore. The truth was speaking for me. And then, just as it always happens with houses built on false foundations, everything truly began to collapse. My parents were investigated by the bank, their accounts were temporarily frozen. The house they had proudly claimed was almost paid off, turned out to be far more in debt than they realized. They began to fight. I heard it all from Helen, the neighbor who had been close to my mother for over 20 years through an email she sent. Your mother blames your father for not stopping Ellie from overspending, and your father says your mother ruined everything by using your name for the loan. They yelled all night. I'm honestly afraid they might divorce. Her words were filled with disbelief, as though she couldn't comprehend how the once model Aniston family had become the town's scandal. Ellie, after her post backfired, deleted her account and vanished from social media. I heard she moved in with her boyfriend in California, taking with her those unfinished manuscripts that were never published. My mother withdrew from her friends, and my father quit his job at the accounting firm because he couldn't stand the whispers behind his back. So she'd been living off her eldest daughter's money all these years, people said. And they were right. They finally had the life without me they'd wished for and mocked me about for so long. Now they were living it completely. A life without the one who paid the bills, without the one who carried the responsibility, without the hands that had held everything together under the name of duty. A life where comfort no longer had anyone left to sustain it. I felt no joy, no sense of vindication. Only a strange silence, like standing outside a building I had once helped construct and watching it crumble because its foundation had long since rotted. One evening, as Eric and I sat on the porch, watching the mountain peaks turn gold beneath the setting sun, he asked, "Do you feel satisfied?" I shook my head. No. I just feel lighter. The truth is finally free and so am I. He nodded quietly, saying nothing more. We sat in stillness, listening to the wind weave through the forest, the scent of pine and snow blending in the air. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in years, my heart carried no trace of guilt. They had gotten what they wanted, a life without me. And just as I had once said, it was crumbling. But for me, their collapse was not an ending, but a rebirth. Because sometimes you have to let an old house fall so that the light can finally find its way in. After everything, on an afternoon when the first spring winds began to move through the pines on the slopes of Telluride, carrying the scent of resin and damp earth after rain, the sky broke into a soft Sunday. The snow was almost gone now, revealing small shoots of green grass around the cabin. I was sitting by the window, adjusting a few design sketches, when I heard the engine of the mail truck down the hill. The mail carrier raised a cream-colored envelope and waved. "For Miss Aniston." I stepped outside to take it, and as soon as I saw the rounded, slightly leaning handwriting on the front, my heart sank. The uneven letters, slanting, left my mother's handwriting. I stood on the porch for a long time, the envelope light yet heavy as though it held a stone inside. It had been more than half a year since I sent that last email, the last time I'd heard their voices. Since then, only a handful of missed calls and deleted messages I never opened. I had thought the cord between us had truly snapped. But now, holding the letter in my hands, I could feel it still there, not as a chain anymore, but as a thin thread of something left unsaid. I went back inside, brewed a cup of mint tea, and sat at the wooden table. I stared at the envelope for a few more seconds, then gently opened it. Inside were 3 handwritten pages. The first line made me stop breathing. "Jennifer, my daughter. If you're reading this letter, it means I've lost the courage to call. I know I no longer deserve to hear your voice." The handwriting trembled, ink smudged in places as if it had absorbed tears. I kept reading. "Your father and I were so blind, Jennifer. We thought love meant control, that criticism would make you better, when in truth it was only selfishness dressed up as care. I was always proud of Ellie because she was weak and needed protecting, and I forgot that you needed love too, no matter how strong you seemed. I taught you to endure instead of to be understood. And when you disappeared, this house became so empty. I finally realized the only person who had ever truly held everything together was you." I stopped reading and looked out the window. Sunlight slanted through the pine branches, scattering shimmering patterns across the table. I closed my eyes and inhaled deeply. The forest was as quiet as ever, only my heart beating one slow, heavy rhythm. Then I turned to the next page. "Your father is no longer the same. Since the bank came, he hardly leaves the house. The doctor says it's depression. He barely speaks now, just sits on the porch staring at the road where you used to drive home for the holidays. Ellie has moved into a small apartment in the city, unemployed and saying she's going to rewrite her life. I don't blame anyone anymore. I don't even have the strength to argue. I've sold the house. They came and took down the curtains you sewed back in college. I've kept a few things, the bowl you broke but glued back together, the photo of all of us in the apple orchard, and the drawing of your wooden house. Now, looking back, I understand. You weren't just drawing walls. You were drawing a dream of a place where you could be yourself. Here the handwriting began to tilt and waver. I could picture my mother sitting at the old dining table, the yellow lamp casting light on her tired face, her hand trembling around the pen. I read on slowly, afraid that any sound might shatter the fragile moment. I'm sorry, Jennifer. There aren't words enough to undo the years I made you feel invisible. But I hope that, if someday you read this letter, you'll know I finally see it. Even if it's late, I still want to say what I should have said long ago. I'm proud of you. Not because you sent money, not because you were accomplished, but because you dared to live true to yourself. I wish you could forgive me, but if you can't, I understand. Just know that I will carry this regret for the rest of my life. The last page held only one small line, the letters shrinking as though whispered. Be happy, Jennifer, I love you. I set the paper down on the table and stared into the quiet space in front of me. The tea had gone cold, the faint scent of mint drifting in the air. I didn't cry. Strangely, the tears no longer knew how to find their way out. There was only stillness deep, like the bottom of a spring lake. I thought of that woman, the one who had spent years demanding that I become the perfect version of her dream, then spent the rest of her life realizing that all her daughter ever needed was to be loved as she was. I didn't resent her anymore. In truth, I felt compassion. Maybe, in her own way, she too had once been a child who grew up with a distorted understanding of love and unknowingly passed it on to me. I folded the letter not with the precision I used for work documents, but gently, as if it were something fragile that might tear. I didn't plan to reply. Not out of anger, but because I knew every word that needed to be said had already been written just too late. I took out a small wooden box where I kept things I couldn't throw away. A photo from my college days, the ticket from the first design exhibition I paid for with my own money, and now, this letter. I placed it inside, closed the lid, and put it away in the drawer. Not locked, just out of sight. That afternoon, when I stepped onto the porch, the wind had shifted. Eric was out front, photographing the sky. The last light of the day spilled across the snow like diluted honey. He looked up and asked softly, "News from Fort Collins?" I nodded with a small smile. "Just a letter." He didn't ask more, only turned his camera toward the setting sun. I followed his lens, watching the glowing orb blur and fade into violet clouds. In that moment, I understood I had just closed a chapter not with anger, but with grace. Spring comes late in Telluride. Snow still clings to the mountain slopes while the valley below begins to turn green. Each morning, sunlight filters through the pines, glimmering on the dew like crystals. I've started a new ritual, waking early, brewing coffee, opening the window, and watching how the light changes color across the wooden walls. Sometimes I think, if someone had told me happiness could be this simple, maybe I wouldn't have needed to endure so much pain. But then I realize it's the cracks that let the light in. Eric often came by early in the morning, carrying a wooden toolbox and sketches he'd captured through his camera. "I want to help you rebuild this house," he said one day, just as the last snow began to melt. "Using real pine wood, the kind sunlight can pass through in the morning." I laughed, thinking he was joking, but he looked at me seriously. "This house deserves to be a place of rebirth, not just for you, but for anyone who's ever needed a space to begin again." End of 7. I was quiet for a moment, then nodded. And so, from the early days of April, we began rebuilding the little cabin, not to change it completely, but to let it become a more mature version of itself. Still the same cabin, but with a new breath. The pine beams were lifted and set into place, one by one. I learned how to hold a hammer, drive nails, measure corners, small tasks that brought a strange kind of peace to my mind. Eric rebuilt the west-facing window frame where the sunset poured in every evening. I redid the floors, choosing a lighter wood so every step would echo with the warmth of life. When we started re-roofing, Eric joked, "If you listen closely, you'll hear your own voice in every strike of the hammer." I looked up at him, sunlight glinting in his warm brown eyes, and suddenly I understood some people don't come into your life to save you. They come to witness you saving yourself. 3 weeks later, the house was finished. It wasn't big, it wasn't elaborate, but it had something most expensive homes never do: sincerity. The small living room opened onto the porch, and the walls were adorned with Eric's landscape photographs, the winter pines, the melting ice of a lake, and the blue light he had once told me about. Beside them was my workspace, where the blueprint for Healing Home hung, the first house I ever designed for myself. Together, we decided to open a small studio. He would handle photography and media, and I would take charge of design and teaching. We named it Lumen Atelier, the Studio of Light. At first, only a few tourists wandered in, curious about what we were doing. But soon, people seeking a place to rest their hearts began to arrive. A photographer who had lost his partner. A retired teacher who wanted to learn how to grow flowers. An architecture student struggling through burnout. They came, stayed for a few days, and left with softer eyes and lighter steps. I taught them not only about design, but about emotion within space, how the way light moves through a room can change the soul of its occupant, how the sound of wind or the scent of wood can bring calm. I started an online course called Designing for Healing Spaces: Architecture for Healing. In every session, I told my own story, not as a tale of suffering, but as a reminder that the first home we must build is always the one within ourselves. Eric often sat quietly at the back of the class, adjusting the lighting or recording the session, smiling whenever I mentioned the word healing. He said I had a gift for turning pain into art. I simply replied, maybe because I'm not afraid of it anymore. In the evenings, we would sit together on the porch steps, sipping tea, watching the moonlight settle over the forest. He would talk about his travels, and I would talk about my students. No loneliness could exist between two people who had learned the grace of being silent together. One early summer morning, I picked up the camera, a gift from Eric, and took a photo on the porch. The two of us smiling, the newly built pine cabin glowing behind us in the sunlight. I stared at the picture for a long while, then opened my laptop and began typing an email. The address: Diane Aniston, the one my mother had used for years. I didn't know if she still checked it, but I typed each word slowly, as if writing to my own heart. Mom, I found peace. I hope someday you do too. Nothing more. No blame, no long farewell. I attached the photo and pressed send. A soft whoosh echoed from the speakers, and the screen went blank. I looked out the window. Sunlight was already spilling across the grass. It didn't matter whether the email reached her or not. Some messages don't need a reply to have meaning. That afternoon, Eric and I walked along the mountain trail. The air was warm, and wild purple flowers bloomed along the path. He held my hand, saying nothing, and in that silence, I realized I had truly forgiven them. Not through words, but through the absence of the need to prove anything anymore. Forgiveness, I learned, isn't about erasing the past, it's about being able to look at it without pain. 3 years have passed since the day I arrived in Telluride. Time, like the spring snow melting over the ridges, has quietly settled over the scars, not to erase them, but to make them part of the landscape. Life here moves slowly, peacefully. Each day, I understand a little more about what being at peace truly means. I'm no longer the woman who drove through a snowstorm trying to escape her pain. I'm the woman who stayed, who built her own warmth, a life that no longer needs to prove anything to anyone. Eric and I had been through 3 winters, 3 springs, and hundreds of bright mornings in the White Valley. Together, we expanded the studio, teaching, photographing, and sharing our journey of healing through space and light. Lumen Atelier slowly became a small sanctuary for those searching to find themselves again, people who, like me once, carried old wounds, were told they weren't enough, or were silenced inside their own homes. Every time someone walked through our door, I saw a reflection of myself in them, cautious eyes, hesitant steps, and then, gradually, the return of a genuine smile. In our third winter, Eric proposed. It was snowing lightly that day, the flakes dancing through the air like a wordless symphony. He had built a frame out of pine wood, and inside it was a photograph I had taken during our first year together, the small wooden cabin we built, sunlight streaming through the doorway, me standing there smiling, holding a cup of coffee. Beneath the photo, he had written, "Marry me, let's keep building together." I laughed through tears before I even realized they'd fallen. I didn't need to think. I simply nodded. The wedding took place at the end of March, on the snowy hill behind our studio, where the sunset bathed the valley in gold. Friends, students, and former guests of Lumen Atelier came, bringing wildflowers, candles, and soft wishes. There was no loud music, only the wind, laughter, and the quiet whisper of snow. I wore a simple white dress, a few pine sprigs at the waist. Eric wore a gray suit, holding a bouquet of wildflowers he'd picked that morning. When I stepped out, the crowd fell silent not because of the dress, but because of the atmosphere. It was warm, serene, as if the entire world was smiling with us. Ellie didn't come. I had expected that. She didn't reply to the invitation, only left a short message online. "I wish you happiness, sis. We're just not meant to stand in the same story anymore." I read it quietly, feeling neither anger nor sadness. Sometimes, distance is the kindest form of love between two people who have hurt each other too much. Mom was different. A week before the wedding, I received a package. Inside was a letter, the handwriting still trembling, still familiar. "Jennifer, I heard you're getting married. I won't be there, maybe my presence would only make things harder for you. But I want you to know that I'm proud. You found something I never knew how to keep. Peace. I wish you happiness. And if you can, please forgive us, so I can finally rest my heart. I love you." I read the letter in the living room, the fire flickering softly beside me. Eric stood next to me, his hand resting gently on my shoulder. I didn't speak, I just nodded, folded the letter carefully, and placed it into the wooden box where I kept all the things that had already found their closure. Forgiveness doesn't need a ceremony. Sometimes, a silent blessing sent across the distance is enough. That evening, Telluride was breathtakingly beautiful. The sky was pale blue like silk, the snow glittering under the last rays of sunlight. Friends gathered around us in a wide circle. Eric looked at me, his eyes calm and steady. When the officiant asked, "Do you, Jennifer Aniston, take this man to be your husband?" I smiled, my voice trembling but strong. "With all that I've been, and all that I've learned, yes, I do." After the ceremony, when everyone had drifted away, Eric and I stayed behind on the hill. I looked down at the valley below, where the last golden light shimmered across the snow. The world was so still it felt like a dream. I stepped up to the small wooden platform where the microphones still stood and looked at the faces gathered below. There's something I've learned, something I wish I had known sooner. Sometimes, we spend years trying to earn love from the wrong people. We try to fit ourselves into rooms that were never built for us. Until one day, silence teaches us, you don't have to stay where you're unseen, you can walk away, you can start again. And that's not failure, that's freedom. No one spoke. Only the sound of the wind and the soft crunch of snow beneath someone's shoes. I looked around and met the eyes of those standing before me, glimmering, tearful, silent. Some bowed their heads, others held the hands of the people beside them. I knew that each of them carried their own kind of wound. And maybe, just maybe, in that moment, they saw a piece of themselves in my story. Afterward, I took the bouquet, lavender mixed with small white blossoms, and walked toward the hill. The snow was soft, and the pale gold of sunset brushed gently across my shoulders. I knelt down and placed the bouquet on the snow. "For the girl who once thought she wasn't enough," I whispered. "You made it home, Helma." Eric wrapped his arms around me, and together we watched the sun sink behind the mountains. The world was so still I could hear my own heartbeat. No echoes of the past, no ghosts of the house in Fort Collins, only the present, quiet, light, and entirely mine. Later that night, after the guests had gone and the music faded, I stepped out onto the porch alone. The wind was soft, and flakes of snow still drifted lazily from the sky. In the distance, the lights from other cabins shimmered like low stars. I thought back on my journey from the invisible daughter to the woman strong enough to choose silence, and finally, to the one who learned to smile and forgive. Life had come full circle, closing in the same place where I had once lost myself. A small sparrow landed on the railing, tilting its head at me. I smiled. Maybe the universe knows when we've learned the lesson we were meant to. I turned back inside, where Eric was taking down the strings of lights from the windows, the glow reflecting softly in his eyes. I walked up behind him and wrapped my arms around his waist. He turned and asked gently, "What are you thinking about?" I smiled. That they once wished they had a perfect daughter. He raised an eyebrow, half curious, half teasing. And did they get her? I looked out the window, where the moonlight touched the pure white snow, and whispered, "They wished they had one daughter." And in the end, they did. The one who finally learned to love herself. I leaned my head on his shoulder, eyes closed. Outside, the wind moved softly through the pines, carrying the faint scent of snow and lavender. Inside, the fire crackled quietly, its light flickering against the walls like memories dissolving into peace. I no longer needed to close the past, it had already closed itself, sealed gently by my own calm. And in that stillness, between the snow and the fading light, I finally understood love isn't something we find in others, it's something we build within ourselves. And when we find it, even in a small cabin in the mountains, we've already found everything. One early summer morning, I picked up the camera, a gift from Eric, and took a photo on the porch, the two of us smiling, the newly built pine cabin glowing behind us in the sunlight. I stared at the picture for a long while, then opened my laptop and began typing an email. The address. Diane. Aniston @ the one my mother had used for years. I didn't know if she still checked it, but I typed each word slowly, as if writing to my own heart. Mom. I found peace. I hope someday you do too. Nothing more. No blame, no long farewell. I attached the photo and pressed send. A soft whoosh echoed from the speakers, and the screen went blank. I looked out the window. Sunlight was already spilling across the grass. It didn't matter whether the email reached her or not. Some messages don't need a reply to have meaning. That afternoon, Eric and I walked along the mountain trail. The air was warm, and wild purple flowers bloomed along the path. He held my hand, saying nothing, and in that silence, I realized I had truly forgiven them. Not through words, but through the absence of the need to prove anything anymore. Forgiveness, I learned, isn't about erasing the past, it's about being able to look at it without pain. 3 years have passed since the day I arrived in Telluride. Time, like the spring snow melting over the ridges, has quietly settled over the scars, not to erase them, but to make them part of the landscape. Life here moves slowly, peacefully. Each day, I understand a little more about what being at peace truly means. I'm no longer the woman who drove through a snowstorm trying to escape her pain. I'm the woman who stayed, who built her own warmth, a life that no longer needs to prove anything to anyone.
My husband was cheating on me with my sister, and when I found out, my world fell apart. So I did the unthinkable. I still remember the exact moment I made the worst decision of my life. It was a Tuesday afternoon when my sister called, her voice cracking through the phone. She'd just been dumped by her boyfriend of 3 years, she said. Caught him cheating with someone from his gym. She was devastated, broke, had nowhere to go. Could she stay with us for a few weeks? I should have said no. God, I should have said no. But she was my baby sister. And despite everything our parents had put me through, the constant comparisons, the way they'd drop everything for her while I had to beg for attention, I couldn't turn her away. She sounded so small, so broken. I told myself I was being the bigger person. That family was supposed to help each other. My husband seemed hesitant when I mentioned it that evening. We were in the kitchen, him chopping vegetables for dinner while I set the table. "Are you sure that's a good idea?" he asked, not looking up from the cutting board. "We finally have the house to ourselves. It's been nice, just us." "It's only temporary," I said, wrapping my arms around him from behind. "She needs help getting back on her feet. We have the spare room doing nothing." He sighed, set down the knife, turned to face me. "Okay, if it's important to you. But let's set some boundaries, all right? A month, maybe 2 at most." She moved in that weekend with 3 suitcases and a broken spirit. For the first week, she barely left the guest room. I'd hear her crying through the walls at night. I brought her meals, sat with her, let her talk about the betrayal. How could he do this to her? How could she not have seen the signs? I held her hand and told her what everyone tells the brokenhearted. That time heals, that she deserved better, that this wasn't her fault. By the second week, she started emerging more. Showering regularly, joining us for dinner, even smiling occasionally. My husband and I had been together for 6 years, married for 4, and our routine was comfortable. We'd both wake at 6, him making coffee while I showered. Then we'd swap. Breakfast together before driving to our respective jobs. Simple, easy, boring in the best way possible. One evening over pasta, I suggested she might want to start looking for work. Nothing pushy, just gentle encouragement. She bit her lip, looked down at her plate. "I don't know if I'm ready yet," she said quietly. "What if I run into him? This city feels so small now." "Then maybe start with something low-key," I offered. "What about my husband's company? They're always hiring for administrative positions." "It's a big building, different floor from where you'd run into anyone from your old circle." My husband glanced at me, surprised, but nodded slowly. "Yeah, I could put in a word with HR. We do need someone in client services. The pay's decent and the team is solid." Her face lit up for the first time since she'd arrived. "Really? You'd do that for me?" She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I don't know what I'd do without you. You've always been there for me even when I didn't deserve it." I squeezed back, feeling warm and needed. This was what family was supposed to be, I thought, supporting each other through the hard times. 2 weeks later, she started working on the 3rd floor of his office building. He was on 7, different departments, different break rooms, different everything. It seemed perfect. She'd have income, independence, a reason to get dressed and leave the house. She'd stop being my project and start being her own person again. I was so proud of myself for helping her. So absolutely, catastrophically proud. The first month went smoothly. She'd come home with stories about her coworkers, about learning the database system, about feeling like herself again. She started going out with friends on weekends, started wearing makeup again, started laughing at dinner. My husband and I would exchange satisfied looks across the table. We'd done a good thing. We'd helped family. We were good people. I didn't notice when she started staying late at the office. Didn't think twice when she mentioned grabbing drinks with my husband and some people from his floor after work. Didn't question why she knew so much about his current projects when they supposedly worked in completely different departments. I was working as a nurse at the county hospital, pulling 3 12-hour shifts a week. Long days, but good money and benefits. It meant I was gone from 7 in the morning until 8 at night on those days. Plenty of time for things to happen in my absence. Looking back now, I can see every single red flag I ignored. But hindsight is just another word for torture, isn't it? It started with little things. Things so small I convinced myself I was being paranoid, jealous, silly. 3 months after my sister started at the company, I came home early from a shift that got cut short due to low patient count. It was a Thursday, around 4 in the afternoon. My husband's car was in the driveway, which wasn't unusual. He sometimes worked from home on Thursdays. But her car was there too, and she wasn't supposed to be off until 6. I found them in the living room, sitting close together on the couch, her laptop open between them. They both jumped slightly when I walked in. "Hey," my husband said, his voice a pitch higher than normal. "You're home early." "Slow day," I explained, setting my bag down. "What are you two up to?" "Oh, just helping her with a presentation," he said quickly. "The client services team has this big pitch next week, and she was nervous about the slides." My sister nodded enthusiastically. "He's been so helpful, I didn't want to bother you while you were at work." It made sense. It all made sense. He was good at presentations, she was new to corporate work, they were just being efficient. I smiled, went to the kitchen to make tea, told myself I was being ridiculous. But after that, I started noticing more. The way she'd touch his arm when she laughed at his jokes. How she'd gotten comfortable enough to raid our fridge without asking, standing there in her pajama shorts at midnight when he'd come down for water. The inside jokes that I wasn't part of. The shared glances across the dinner table that I couldn't quite read. "You two seem to be getting along well," I mentioned to my husband one night as we got ready for bed. He was brushing his teeth, and he shrugged through the mirror. "She's nice. Easy to work with. Why?" "No reason. Just noticing." He rinsed and turned to me. "Are you uncomfortable with her being here? We can talk to her about finding her own place if it's too much." No, I said quickly, feeling guilty for even bringing it up. "I'm glad she has support. Forget I said anything." He kissed my forehead. "You're a good sister. Not everyone would do what you're doing for her." I held on to those words like a lifeline over the following weeks. She started coming to the house during lunch breaks. I'd be at the hospital, and my husband would mention casually over dinner that she'd stopped by to grab something she'd forgotten, or to use our better printer, or because the office microwave was broken and she needed to heat up lunch. Always a reasonable explanation. Always logical. "She's here a lot," I said one evening, trying to keep my voice light and non-accusatory. "Is she?" my husband asked, looking genuinely surprised. I guess I hadn't noticed. "She's usually only here for like 20 minutes during lunch." "Right. Of course." Then there was the weekend I had to cover an extra shift. Another nurse called in sick and they were desperate. I'd be gone Saturday morning through Sunday evening. When I mentioned it, my sister immediately volunteered to keep my husband company. "Oh, I'll make dinner Saturday night," she said brightly. "You're always cooking for us. Let me return the favor." "You don't have to do that," my husband said, but he was smiling. "I want to. Besides, we can finally watch that series everyone's been talking about." "You're always saying we should." I felt something twist in my stomach, but I pushed it down. They were just being nice. She was bored. He was lonely. They were bonding as family. This was good, actually. I should be happy they got along. Sunday night, when I got home, exhausted and smelling like disinfectant, the house was spotless. Too spotless. The kitchen gleamed, there were fresh flowers on the dining table, and candles, burned down to stubs, sat on the coffee table. "Wow," I said, dropping my bag. "You guys went all out." "Your sister's idea," my husband said from the couch, not looking up from his phone. "She thought you'd want to come home to a clean house." "Where is she?" "Went to bed about an hour ago. Said she wasn't feeling great." I walked through our bedroom to change, and something felt off. The bed was made differently than I usually made it. Hospital corners instead of my loose tuck. The pillows were arranged wrong. One of my husband's shirts was tossed over the chair, inside out, which he never did. I stood there in the doorway, my heart starting to pound, my mind racing through possibilities I didn't want to consider. But then my husband came up behind me, wrapped his arms around my waist, kissed my neck. "Missed you," he murmured. And just like that, I let it go. I let it all go. Because the alternative, the thing my gut was trying to tell me, was too horrible to be real. I went to work, I came home, I smiled and cooked and played the role of the good wife. The good sister. The good person who trusted her family, even when I found her hair tie on our nightstand. Even when his cologne started smelling different, mixed with a perfume I recognized as hers. Even when I came home one afternoon and the shower was running in our master bathroom, and she emerged 10 minutes later in one of my robes, explaining she'd been at the gym and their showers were broken. Every single time, there was an explanation. And every single time, I chose to believe it. Because believing meant I didn't have to face what was really happening under my own roof. Our 4th wedding anniversary was coming up, and my husband suggested a weekend getaway. "Just the two of us," he said. "A bed and breakfast 2 hours north near the lake. Reconnect, relax, remember why we fell in love." I was thrilled. Maybe I had been paranoid. Maybe the distance I'd been feeling was just normal relationship drift, easily fixed with quality time together. I booked the place, a charming Victorian house with a lake view, and counted down the days. The Friday we were supposed to leave, my sister announced she'd be spending the weekend at our parents' house. "They've been asking me to visit," she said over breakfast. "I figured while you two are gone, it's the perfect time." "That's sweet of you," I said, relief flooding through me. Space. We'd all have space. This was good. We left around noon, my husband driving while I controlled the music, singing along off-key to songs from when we first started dating. He laughed, reached over to squeeze my hand, and for the first time in months, everything felt normal. Felt right. The bed and breakfast was perfect. White linens, fresh flowers, a clawfoot tub. We had dinner at a small restaurant downtown, drank too much wine, walked back holding hands. In our room, we made love like we hadn't in months. Present, connected, actually there with each other. Saturday morning, we slept in, had breakfast in bed. I was in the shower when my phone rang. My husband answered it. When I came out, toweling my hair, he was sitting on the edge of the bed, phone in his hand, face pale. "What's wrong?" I asked. "That was your dad. Your mom had a fall. She's okay, but they're at the hospital. He thinks we should come back." We were dressed and in the car within 20 minutes. I called my dad back for details. She'd tripped, hit her head on the coffee table, probably had a concussion but was being kept for observation. Nothing life-threatening, but scary. We went straight to the hospital. I ran inside while my husband parked, found my dad in the waiting room looking tired but calm. "Where's Mom?" I asked. "Getting a scan. Should be back soon." He hugged me. "Sorry about your weekend." "Don't be. I'm just glad she's okay." "Where's my sister?" Something flickered across his face. "She left about an hour ago. Said she needed to get something from your place." My place. From my house. While we were supposed to be gone all weekend. "Dad," I said slowly. "What time did Mom fall?" "This morning around 10. And my sister was there?" "She got there last night for dinner. Stayed over in your old room." I pulled out my phone and opened the location app we all shared for convenience. "My sister was on it too," added when she moved in. Her dot showed her at our house. Had been there since yesterday afternoon. She'd never gone to our parents' house at all. I don't remember walking to the car. I remember my husband's face when I got in, the way his expression shifted from concern to confusion to fear when he saw my face. "Drive to the house," I said. "What?" "Your mom?" "Drive. To. The house." The 15-minute drive felt like hours. Neither of us spoke. I watched his hands grip the steering wheel, knuckles white. He knew. Of course he knew. Her car was in our driveway. I was out before he'd fully stopped, my key in the lock, door swinging open. The house was quiet. Then I heard it from upstairs, a laugh I recognized. I climbed the stairs. Our bedroom door was closed but not locked. I opened it. They were in our bed. My bed. The sheets I'd washed 3 days ago. She was wearing one of my nightgowns. They weren't touching when I opened the door, but they didn't need to be. The scene told everything. Clothes on the floor, rumpled sheets, her hair on my pillow, his bare chest, the guilty terror on both their faces. I couldn't breathe. "It's not," my sister started. "Don't," I heard myself say. "Don't you dare." My husband scrambled out of bed, pulling on his pants. "Let me explain." "In our bed?" My voice cracked. "How long?" Silence. "How long?" I screamed it. 3 months, my sister whispered. 3 months. The entire time I'd been doubting myself, calling myself paranoid. They'd been doing this. In my house. In my bed. I turned and walked out. Down the stairs. Out the door. Into my car. My husband ran after me, shirtless, barefoot, but I was already backing out. I drove back to the hospital, back to my dad, told him in clinical terms what I'd found. He didn't look surprised. He looked tired. "You knew," I said. "Your mother saw them together a few weeks ago. She didn't want to tell you, thought maybe it would blow over." Everyone I'd trusted had been lying to me. I called a lawyer that night from a hotel room, filed for divorce on Monday. My husband moved out while I stayed with a coworker. I never slept in that house again. The next few days were a blur of paperwork, boxes, and suffocating silence. I moved into a furnished apartment on the other side of town, something temporary while the divorce processed. My coworker had offered her guest room, but I couldn't bear to impose. I needed to be alone anyway, to process the magnitude of what had happened. I told my parents in person, drove to their house on a Tuesday evening, let myself in with the key I'd had since high school. My mother was in the kitchen making dinner. The smell of pot roast, my childhood favorite, made my stomach turn. "Honey," she said, turning from the stove with a smile that faded when she saw my face. "What's wrong?" "You know what's wrong." My voice was flat. "Dad told me you knew." Her smile vanished completely. She set down the spoon carefully, wiped her hands on her apron. "Let's not do this right now." "When should we do it, Mom? Next week? Next month? After they get married?" The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. My father appeared in the doorway, newspaper in hand. "What's going on?" "She knows," my mother said quietly. "About the affair?" I laughed. A sharp, ugly sound. Yeah, I know. I caught them in my bed, wearing my clothes, in my house. I looked at my mother. When were you going to tell me? I thought, she started, then stopped. I thought if I didn't say anything, maybe it would end on its own. People make mistakes. Your husband loves you. He was sleeping with my sister. I said slowly, like explaining to a child. In our marital bed. For 3 months. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. Multiple choices. Hundreds of them. My father shifted uncomfortably. These things happen. Marriage is complicated. Don't. I held up a hand. Don't you dare minimize this. My mother moved closer, reaching for me. Honey, I know you're hurt. But your sister is devastated. She never meant for this to happen. She was vulnerable. And things just... I stepped back from her touch. Are you actually defending her right now? I'm not defending anyone. I'm just saying that maybe, with time, you could forgive. Forgive. The word felt foreign in my mouth. She seduced my husband. She used my home, my bed, my trust. And you want me to forgive her? She's your sister, my mother said, her voice taking on that pleading quality I'd heard so many times growing up. She needs you. This has been so hard on her. Hard on her? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What about me? What about what this has done to me? My mother's face crumpled. Of course I care about you. But your sister? She's always been more sensitive. You're stronger. You'll get through this. There it was. The truth I'd always known but never wanted to acknowledge. Even in my moment of complete betrayal and devastation, my sister's feelings mattered more than mine. I was expected to be strong, to understand, to forgive, because that's what the strong one did. Where is she now? I asked. Upstairs. In her old room. She came back here after everything. And my husband? My father finally spoke, his voice tired. A hotel downtown, last I heard. He's called several times asking about you. I looked at them both. These people who'd raised me, who were supposed to protect me, who'd chosen my sister over me one more time. I filed for divorce yesterday. The house is being sold. I'm keeping my maiden name. You don't have to make any rash decisions. My father said. It's not rash. It's 3 months too late. I pulled my house key off my keyring and set it on the kitchen counter. I don't need this anymore. What does that mean? My mother asked, alarm creeping into her voice. It means I'm done. With all of this. With her. With you choosing her over me every single time. I headed toward the door. You can't just cut us out, my mother called after me. We're your family. I turned back. Family doesn't do this. Family doesn't watch you get destroyed and stay silent. Family doesn't ask the victim to be understanding of the person who betrayed them. I left before they could respond, got in my car, and drove away. My phone started ringing before I'd even reached the highway. My mother, then my father, then my mother again. I let them all go to voicemail. That night, my sister posted on social media for the first time in months. A photo of herself looking sad but beautiful, with some quote about how we can't help who we fall in love with, how the heart wants what it wants. The comments were sympathetic. Most people didn't know the full story. Some did and commented anyway, defending her, saying these things happen. She sent me a text around midnight. I never wanted to hurt you. Can we talk? I blocked her number. She sent an email. Please, I know you're angry, but he was the one who pursued me. I was vulnerable. I didn't mean for this to happen. I blocked her email. She sent a message through a mutual friend. I'm willing to end things with him if that's what you need. Too little, too late, and still making herself the victim. The divorce moved forward. My husband tried to fight it at first, sent flowers to my office, showed up at my apartment building until I threatened a restraining order. Eventually, his lawyer convinced him to just sign. We split everything 50-50. I didn't want more. I just wanted out. 3 months after I'd found them together, the divorce was finalized. On the same day, my sister posted a photo of herself and my ex-husband together, officially announcing their relationship. The caption, "When you know, you know." I sat in my empty apartment, divorce papers on the coffee table, and laughed until I cried. The decision to leave came gradually, then all at once. I'd been seeing a therapist twice a week since the divorce, working through the layers of betrayal. In one session, about 2 months after everything finalized, she asked a simple question. If you could design your ideal life right now, with no obligations to anyone else, what would it look like? I sat there, the question hanging in the air, and realized I couldn't answer it. I'd spent so long being what everyone else needed that I had no idea who I actually was or what I wanted. That's your homework, she said gently. Figure out what you want. At the top of every list I made that week was the same thing. Distance. Space. A fresh start where no one knew my story. I started researching transfers through my hospital network. We had facilities in almost every major city. I applied to Minneapolis and within 2 weeks got the offer. A slight promotion, better pay, and a city where no one knew my name. My parents found out when my mother called the apartment and the landlord mentioned I'd given notice. She called me 17 times that day. I answered the 18th. You're leaving? Her voice was shrill with panic. Without even telling us? I'm telling you now. Where are you going? Away. You can't just run from your problems. I'm not running from my problems, Mom. I'm running from you. The words felt cruel but true. Every time I see you, you ask if I've forgiven her yet. You never once asked how I'm doing. That's not fair. Of course I care. Do you? You chose when you didn't tell me about the affair. You choose her every single time. Silence. I got a transfer. I'm moving in 3 weeks. I won't be giving you the address. I need time to figure out who I am without all of this. How long? She asked, her voice small. I don't know. Maybe forever. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind. I sold everything I could. Furniture from the apartment, most of my clothes, wedding gifts. Anything that reminded me of my old life went to donation centers. I kept my nursing certificates, photos from college, and my grandmother's necklace, the only family heirloom I cared about. I had distant cousins in Minneapolis, second cousins I'd met twice at family reunions. I reached out, explained I was relocating for work. They offered to help me apartment hunt. The kindness of near strangers felt safer than family. The day I left, I woke at 4 a.m, loaded my car, everything I owned fit in a sedan and small trailer, and drove out as the sun rose. I didn't say goodbye to my parents in person, didn't drive past the house I'd shared with my ex, didn't take a nostalgic tour. I just left. The drive took 2 days. I stopped at a motel in Iowa and cried for the first time since making the decision. Not sad tears exactly, more like release. Like setting down a weight I'd carried so long I'd forgotten it wasn't part of my body. Minneapolis was cold, even in early September. The apartment my cousins helped me find was small but mine, a 1-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood near a lake. My new hospital was bigger than my old one, busier, more impersonal in a way I found comforting. No one here knew I was divorced. No one knew about my sister. I was just another nurse, another transplant, another person starting over. I changed my phone number, deleted all my social media accounts, created new ones under my maiden name with privacy settings locked down. I wanted to be findable if I chose to be found, but not before I was ready. My parents sent letters to my old address. The landlord forwarded them. I read the first few, pleased to come home, updates about my sister's life I hadn't asked for, then stopped opening them. Eventually, I wrote "Return to Sender" and sent them back unopened. It was harsh. It was necessary. It was the only way I could breathe. The house my ex-husband and I had owned sold within 2 months. The proceeds were split as agreed. I put my half into savings and tried not to think about the life I'd planned in those rooms. My sister moved in with him shortly after. I found out through a mutual friend who didn't realize I'd cut all contact. I thanked her for telling me and asked her not to share any more updates. 6 months into my new life, I went on my first date since the divorce. A resident from the hospital, nice enough. We got coffee, talked about work and weather. It was boring in the best way. He didn't become anything serious, but it reminded me I could do this. Meet someone new. Exist as a person separate from my past. I was rebuilding. Slowly, carefully, on my own terms. 9 months after I'd left, I finally felt like I could breathe properly. The nightmares had decreased. The constant knot in my stomach had loosened. I'd made friends at work, joined a book club, started taking pottery classes on weekends. Small things. Normal things. The building blocks of a life. I thought I was safe. I thought I'd gotten far enough away. Then the invitation arrived. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive-looking, addressed in calligraphy to my new apartment. Someone had found me. The return address was my parents' house. I stood in my kitchen holding it, my hand shaking slightly. Part of me wanted to throw it away unopened, but something about the formality made me pause. I opened it. Inside was a wedding invitation. My sister and my ex-husband were getting married in 3 months. The ceremony would be at my parents' church. The reception at the same country club where my own wedding had been held. There was a note tucked inside, handwritten by my mother. "Dearest," it began, "I know this may come as a surprise, but your sister and he have found real love together. After everything that's happened, we hope you can find it in your heart to celebrate with them. Your sister specifically asked if you'd consider being a bridesmaid, just like she was at your wedding. She misses you terribly and wants nothing more than to have her sister by her side. We understand you've needed time and space, but it's been almost a year now. Family is forever. We miss you so much. Love, Mom." I sat down at my kitchen table and felt something hot and sharp rise in my chest. Not sadness, not even hurt anymore. Just pure crystalline rage. The audacity, the sheer breathtaking audacity of it all. They wanted me to be a bridesmaid, to stand up there and smile while my sister married the man she'd stolen from me, to celebrate their love built on lies and betrayal and my complete destruction. I called my therapist, got her emergency line, left a message. She called back within an hour. "Tell me what happened," she said. I read her the invitation and note, my voice getting tighter with each word. "And how do you feel?" she asked. Like I'm losing my mind. Like they're gaslighting me into thinking I'm the crazy one. Like they've rewritten history so completely that they genuinely believe I should be happy for them. "What do you want to do?" Part of me wants to write back with everything I'm thinking. Part of me wants to show up at that wedding and object. Part of me wants to set the invitation on fire and never speak to any of them again. Which part feels most true to who you are now? I was quiet for a long moment. The part that wants to set it on fire. Then maybe that's your answer. We talked for another 40 minutes. About boundaries, about family systems, about how sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is nothing at all. I took a photo of the invitation and note, saved them in a folder labeled evidence. Then I shredded both, watching the strips fall into my trash can like confetti. I didn't respond. Didn't call, didn't write, didn't acknowledge receipt in any way. Silence was my answer. 3 days later, my mother called my work number. My supervisor came to find me. "You have a call. Says it's your mother. She says it's urgent." I took it in an empty conference room. "Did you get the invitation?" my mother asked. "Yes." And nothing. "I'm not coming." "Don't be ridiculous. It's your sister's wedding." "To my ex-husband," I interrupted. "Mom, you want me to celebrate the relationship that ended my marriage? That destroyed my family. That made me leave everything I knew. And you think I should be a bridesmaid? It's been a year. It could be 10 years and the answer would still be no. Your sister wants you there. She's been so depressed. She cries every night knowing you won't be part of her special day." Something in me snapped. "She cries? She's depressed? Mom, she slept with my husband, in my bed, for months, while living in my house, and you're asking me to care about her feelings? She made a mistake. Stop calling it a mistake. Mistakes are accidental. This was a choice. Hundreds of choices. Every single day they chose to betray me and you chose to enable it. And now you want me to smile and celebrate? If you don't come, you'll regret it. No, Mom. You'll regret that I'm not there. Because it'll be harder to pretend everything is fine if I'm not there playing along. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but I felt lighter. Like I'd finally said things that needed to be said for years. The wedding happened without me. I found out later through a mutual friend. It was beautiful, apparently. My sister wore white. My parents looked happy in the photos. I spent that day at a pottery class, my hands covered in clay, making a lopsided bowl. It was one of the better days I'd had in a long time. 4 years. 4 whole years passed before I saw any of them again. They were good years. Hard-earned, carefully built years. I'd gotten promoted to charge nurse. Started dating someone seriously. A chef named Patrick, who worked at a restaurant downtown, who made me laugh and didn't ask too many questions about my past. We'd moved in together after a year, and 3 months ago, he'd proposed. The ring was simple, exactly what I would have chosen. I was happy. Actually, genuinely happy in a way I hadn't known was possible. Then, on a Saturday afternoon in October, someone buzzed my apartment. Patrick was at work. Lunch service. I was home cleaning, planning to meet him later for dinner. I almost didn't answer the intercom. "Hello? It's me." A voice I hadn't heard in 4 years but would have recognized anywhere. "Can we talk?" My ex-husband. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then anger flooded through me. "No," I said. "Please. 5 minutes. I just need closure." "You need closure?" I laughed. "You've had 4 years. I'm not your therapist. I'm getting divorced. I need to talk to someone who understands. Please." I should have hung up, should have called security. Instead, I buzzed him up. He looked different when I opened my door. Thinner, older, tired. He was dressed nicely. Too nicely, like he'd put effort into this visit. "You look well," he said. "I am well." I didn't invite him in. "You have 5 minutes." He glanced past me, noticing Patrick's jacket, the photos on the wall. "You're seeing someone." "I'm engaged. 4 minutes." Pain flickered across his face. "I'm happy for you, really. 3.5 minutes. I'm getting divorced. From your sister. It's ugly. And I needed to say I'm sorry. For everything." I leaned against my door frame, arms crossed. "And you thought showing up unannounced would make that better?" "I didn't know how else to reach you. I hired someone to find you. You stalked me? I needed closure. Needed you to know that you were right about everything. I already knew I was right. She cheated on me," he said. "Multiple times. With multiple men. The entire marriage. I finally understood what I put you through. I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No vindication. Just vast, empty indifference. Is that what you came for? To tell me your marriage failed? To get me to forgive you? I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I lost. You want to know what you lost?" I stepped closer. "You lost someone who loved you completely, who trusted you. You lost that when you chose to sleep with my sister in our bed, every single day for 3 months, and you lost any right to my time when you let me walk in and find you together." He flinched. "You don't get closure from me. You don't get forgiveness. You don't get to feel better because you're facing consequences. You get to live with what you did. The difference is, I built something better. You just repeated the same mistakes with someone worse." "I know," he said quietly. "Then why are you here?" "I wanted to see that you were okay. That we didn't destroy you. You didn't destroy me. You hurt me. There's a difference. And I'm more than okay. I'm happy. I'm building a life with someone who deserves my trust. Your sister moved back in with your parents," he said. "After I filed. She has nothing. No job, no money. I made sure of that. I don't care what happens to her. I don't care what happens to any of you. That's what 4 years of no contact looks like. Your parents ask about you, they miss you. They should have thought of that before. Now your 5 minutes are up. Don't come back here. Don't try to find me again. We're done." I started to close the door, but he put his hand out. "Wait. I'm glad you're happy. You deserved better than what I gave you." "I know," I said. "Goodbye." I closed the door, locked it, and called building security to add him to the no-entry list. Then I called Patrick. "Hey, beautiful," he answered, kitchen noise in the background. "What's up?" "My ex-husband just showed up at our apartment." "What? Are you okay? Do you need me to come home?" "No. I'm fine, he's gone. I just needed to hear your voice." "I'm coming home." "Patrick, you're in the middle of service." "I don't care. Give me 20 minutes." He was there in 15, still in his chef's jacket. He held me while I told him everything. "You're amazing," he said. "You know that? The way you handled that?" I just told him the truth. "Exactly." He kissed my forehead. "Ready for dinner? We can go somewhere else if you want." "No, I want to go to the restaurant. I want to sit at the bar and watch you cook and remember that I have an actual future now." And that's exactly what we did. I thought that would be the end of it. One awkward confrontation, security alerted, chapter closed. I should have known better. He showed up at Patrick's restaurant 3 days later. I was sitting at the bar like I did most evenings when Patrick worked late, nursing a glass of wine and reading. The restaurant was busy but not packed. Then he walked in. I saw him before he saw me. He looked around, uncertain, overdressed in a suit. Then his eyes found mine. I stood immediately, ready to leave, but he was already walking over. "Please," he said. "I just want to talk. 5 minutes. Then I'll never bother you again." "You said that last time." "I know. But there are things you should know. About your sister. About what really happened." Patrick appeared beside me, spatula in hand. "Everything okay here?" "This is my ex-husband. He was just leaving." Patrick looked at me. "Your call." Part of me wanted to walk away, but another part wanted to know. Wanted to understand how bad it had really been. "One conversation," I said. "Then you leave and don't come back. Ever." Patrick squeezed my hand before returning to the kitchen, though I could see him watching us. My ex sat down, ordered a whiskey he didn't drink. "She was cheating the entire time," he started. "Not just with me, before me. Her boyfriend didn't catch her at the gym. She got caught in their bed with his best friend. I felt nothing. No surprise, just tired acceptance. She needed a place to stay and saw an opportunity. She wanted what you had. I figured that out myself. Did you know she targeted me deliberately? At work, before she even moved in. She'd seen photos of us, knew we were married. The day you got her the interview, she already knew exactly who I was. That surprised me. The premeditation. She pursued me, he said. I'm not innocent. I made the choice. But she planned it. Every lunch, every late night, every time she showed up when you were at work. Why are you telling me this? Because you should know it wasn't about you. She's a parasite. She finds people who have something she wants and takes it. And you're just realizing this now? I realized it 6 months into the marriage. Found messages on her phone. She was sleeping with at least 3 other men, all married, all with something she wanted. Money, status, connections. He sipped his whiskey. I confronted her. She cried, apologized. I stayed, like an idiot. She kept cheating. I kept finding out. You're telling me this because you want sympathy? No, I'm telling you because when I filed for divorce, I made sure she got nothing. I'd hidden assets, documented every affair. She tried to take me for everything, but my lawyers made sure she walked away with barely enough for a security deposit. She's broke, unemployed, back living with your parents. I processed this slowly. You destroyed her financially? I did what she deserved. It was vindictive, calculated, the kind of revenge I'd fantasized about years ago. But hearing about it now, I felt no satisfaction, just distant pity. And my parents? I asked. Not well. She's still the golden child, but even they're getting tired of her. Your dad mentioned they missed you, that they'd made a mistake. Too little, too late. That's what I said. He finished his whiskey. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just thought you deserved to know the full story, to know you were right to walk away. I already knew that. He nodded, stood up, pulled out his wallet. I'm sorry, he said, for all of it. I hope that guy, he gestured toward Patrick, knows how lucky he is. He does, I said. Goodbye. This time, he actually left. Patrick came over immediately. You okay? Yeah, actually I am. And I meant it. Hearing the full extent of my sister's manipulation, her continued pattern of betrayal, none of it hurt. It just confirmed what I already knew. Leaving had been right. What did he want? To tell me I was right, that she was worse than I thought, that he destroyed her financially, and she's living with my parents now. Good, Patrick said with surprising vehemence. Then softer. Does it help? Knowing that? Not really, but it doesn't hurt either. I just feel free, like that was the last piece I needed to hear before I could completely move on. He kissed my forehead. Then let's move on. Together. And we did. Life moved forward. Patrick and I got married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the lake, surrounded by friends and his family who'd become mine. No drama, no unwanted guests, just love and laughter and promises we both intended to keep. We had our first child a year after that. Then a second. Patrick's parents became the grandparents mine never were. His sister became the family I'd always wished for. We built something real, something solid, something that had nothing to do with the people who'd hurt me. I thought that was the end of the story. Then, 5 years after my ex showed up at the restaurant, my phone started ringing. The call started on a Tuesday. Unknown numbers, all from my old area code. I ignored the first 3, blocked them. Then more came. By Thursday, I'd blocked 15 numbers. Then, the emails started. From addresses I didn't recognize, with subjects like, please read and it's urgent. I deleted them without opening them. Friday morning, I got a message on social media from a cousin I barely knew. Your family is trying to reach you. It's important. Please call your mother. I stared at the message. Patrick was at the restaurant. The kids were at school. The house was quiet. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but another part needed to know what could possibly be so urgent. I called my mother's number. She answered on the first ring. Hello? Her voice was older, shakier than I remembered. 9 years since I'd heard it. It's me, I said. A sob. Oh, God. Oh, thank God. We've been trying to reach you for weeks. What do you want? Can we do a video call? Please. Your father and sister need to see you. We need to talk. Every instinct screamed at me to hang up, but curiosity won. Fine. 1 call. Then I'm blocking all of you again. She sent a link immediately. I clicked it. Suddenly, I was looking at my parents' living room. They were older. My mother's hair completely gray, my father thinner. And between them, looking pale and exhausted, was my sister. She looked terrible, thin in an unhealthy way, dark circles under her eyes, skin sallow. wearing pajamas in the afternoon. You look good, my mother said, tears streaming. Is that your house? Are those photos of children? I turned my laptop so they couldn't see my family photos. What do you want? My father cleared his throat. Your sister is sick. I'm sorry to hear that. But I'm not a doctor. If she needs medical advice, she should see a specialist. We have, my mother said quickly. Dozens. She has kidney disease. Stage 4 renal failure. She needs a transplant. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. And you're calling me because? Because you're family, my father said. We had her tested. Her tissue type is rare. We've been on the transplant list for 2 years. No matches. But you're her sister. There's a strong possibility you'd be compatible. The silence stretched. I could hear my heartbeat. You want my kidney? I said slowly. We want you to get tested, my mother corrected, to see if you're a match. Siblings have the best chance. No, please, my sister spoke, her voice weak. I know I don't deserve it. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I'm dying. The doctors say maybe a year without a transplant. Maybe less. That's terrible, I said, and meant it. It was terrible, but it wasn't my problem. We'll pay for everything, my father said. All the testing, surgery, recovery costs. We'll pay you. You think this is about money? You think you can buy my kidney? No. Of course not, my mother said quickly. We don't know what else to say. She's our daughter, your sister. Family helps family. Family doesn't sleep with your husband. Family doesn't manipulate and destroy your life. Family doesn't ask the person they betrayed to give up an organ. I know, my sister said, crying. I know I was awful. I was jealous and selfish. But I'm begging you, please, just get tested. If you're not a match, then at least we tried. If I am, then what? I give you my kidney and we're family again? Everything is forgiven? No, my father said firmly. We're not asking for reconciliation. We're asking for mercy. Mercy. The word hung in the air. How did you find me? I asked. Your ex-husband, my mother admitted. He told us where you were. Said you'd moved on. He said we shouldn't bother you. But you needed something from me. We didn't know what else to do. She's dying. I have 2 daughters, I said quietly. 2 little girls who don't know you exist. Who have grandparents who love them, who show up for them. Who would never ask them to sacrifice themselves for someone who destroyed them. Please, my mother whispered. Please just think about it. Just get tested. I'll think about it, I heard myself say. I'll call you back in a week. I disconnected. When Patrick came home, I told him everything. He listened, his face growing angrier. You're not seriously considering this, he said. I don't know what I'm considering. She destroyed your life. She doesn't deserve your kidney. I know. But what if I don't do it and she dies? What if I could have saved her and chose not to? That's not on you. That's on her. Actions have consequences. I need time to think. And I did. For a week, I thought about almost nothing else. I talked to my therapist. I talked to Patrick's sister. I lay awake at night, weighing mercy against justice, family against betrayal. In the end, I did the only thing I could do. I got tested. The test results came back in 3 days. Perfect match. 6 out of 6 markers. The doctor used words like exceptional compatibility and ideal donor candidate. But you're under no obligation, he said carefully. Being a match doesn't mean you have to donate. I called my mother. I'm a match. Perfect match. The sound she made was somewhere between a sob and a prayer. Oh, thank God. I haven't said I'll do it, but you're thinking about it. I need to talk to you all again, in person, at the hospital where she's being treated. I want to talk to her doctors. Yes. Of course, anything. We set it up for the following week. Patrick didn't want me to go alone, but I needed to do this myself. The drive back felt surreal. I'd left 9 years ago swearing I'd never return. I met my parents in the hospital lobby. They looked older in person, smaller. My mother tried to hug me. I stepped back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. They took me to a conference room where my sister was waiting with her nephrologist. She looked worse in person. Jaundiced, swollen, exhausted. The doctor explained everything. Her kidney function was at 12%. She was on dialysis 3 times a week. Without a transplant, maybe 6 months. With one, she could live normally. And the surgery for the donor? Laparoscopic. Small incisions. Quick recovery. Most donors are back to normal within 6 weeks. You can live a perfectly healthy life with 1 kidney. And if I decide to do this, what's the timeline? We could schedule within 2 weeks. The sooner the better. She's declining quickly. I looked at my sister. This person who'd destroyed my life, now dying and asking for more. Can I speak to my family alone? The medical staff left. Just the 4 of us now. If I do this, I started, I need things from you first. Anything, my mother said immediately. I need the truth. About everything. About why you chose her over me. My father shifted uncomfortably. We made mistakes. That's not the truth. That's a deflection. We thought you were strong enough to handle it. My mother said quietly. She's always been fragile. Needy. And you were always so independent. We thought... She stopped. We thought wrong. We failed you. And the kidney? Is this just about the kidney? Or is there more you need? Silence. Too long. There's more, isn't there? My father cleared his throat. The medical bills, even with insurance, they're substantial. We've taken out a second mortgage. We're drowning. If you could help, you want money too. I laughed without humor. You want my kidney and my money. A loan, he said quickly. We'd pay you back. With what? You're already drowning. We'll sell the house if we have to. But right now we need help. And you're the only one who can give it. How much? 50,000. To clear the medical debt and catch up on the mortgage. I turned to look at them. All 3. Desperate and broken, asking me to fix what they'd destroyed. I need time. I'll call you in 2 days with my decision. 2 days? My sister's voice panicked. I might not have 2 days. Every day I wait. Then you should have thought of that before you slept with my husband. I said coldly. Before you destroyed my life. 2 days. That's what you get. I left. Drove to a hotel, called Patrick, told him everything. They want money too? He sounded incredulous. Your kidney and $50,000? They're desperate. They're manipulative. This is extortion. I know. So what are you going to do? I was quiet. I'm going to give her my kidney. What? But not my money. Not my forgiveness. Not my family. I'm giving her my kidney because I can live with saving her life even if she doesn't deserve it. But I can't live with letting her die when I could have helped. That's not who I am. Patrick was quiet. But I'm doing it my way, I continued. On my terms. And then I'm walking away forever. Okay, he said finally. I trust you. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. And that reminded me why I'd rebuilt my life. Why I'd chosen better. I called my mother the next morning. I'll donate the kidney, I said. But you need to hear what comes with that decision. Anything. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm not giving you money. Not a loan. Not a gift. Nothing. You'll have to figure that out yourselves. And after the surgery, after recovery, I'm gone again. This doesn't mean we're family. This doesn't mean reconciliation. This means I'm choosing to save her life because it's the right thing to do, not because she deserves it. We understand. Do you? Because I need you to really understand. I'm not doing this for you. I'm not doing this for her. I'm doing this for me, so I can look at myself in the mirror, so I can tell my daughters someday that when I had the power to save a life, I did it. Even when that person had hurt me. That's the only reason. My mother was crying. We'll take whatever you're willing to give. Then let's schedule the surgery. 2 weeks later, I was back in that hospital, being prepped for surgery. Patrick had come with me this time, refused to let me do this part alone. He sat with me in pre-op, holding my hand. You're sure about this? He asked one more time. I'm sure about us, I said. And that's all that matters. They wheeled me into surgery. The last thing I remember is the anesthesiologist telling me to count backward from 10. When I woke up, it was done. I had told my mother I would give the kidney, but I hadn't told her when. After that phone call, I flew back home, told Patrick about my decision, told him I needed a few days to prepare myself mentally. The surgery would be scheduled soon, but first I needed to arrange things. Time off work, childcare, recovery plans. But something kept nagging at me. The way they'd asked for money, too. The way my mother had seemed more relieved than grateful. The way my father had jumped straight to financial planning. The way my sister had looked at me, not with remorse, but with expectation. Like I owed her this. I spent those days thinking, really thinking, about what this meant, about what I was teaching my daughters if I gave my sister everything while getting nothing, not even an apology that felt real. I called my therapist for an emergency session. You're having second thoughts, she said. It wasn't a question. I don't know if I can do it, not because I'm scared of the surgery, but because I'm scared of what it means, that I'm still letting them use me, that I'm still choosing their needs over my own boundaries. What would it mean to say no? It would mean she might die. And what would it mean to say yes? I was quiet for a long time. It would mean I'm still the one who has to be strong, who has to sacrifice, who has to save everyone while they take and never give back. Those are both heavy weights to carry. Which one feels right for you? I didn't answer. Couldn't answer. A week passed, then another. My mother called daily. I didn't answer. They needed to schedule soon, she said in voicemails. Time was running out. Please call back. Patrick found me in our bedroom one night staring at my phone. What are you going to do? He asked. I think I need to go back, one more time, to talk to them face to face. To make sure I can live with whatever choice I make. Want me to come? No, I need to do this alone. I flew back 3 days later, called my mother from the airport. I'm in town, I said. I want to meet at the hospital. All of you. I need to talk to you before we schedule anything. Of course. We can be there in an hour. I sat in that same conference room where we'd met before, waited for them to arrive. My parents came first, looking anxious. Then my sister, in a wheelchair now, looking worse than before. Thank you for coming back, my mother started. We can schedule the surgery for next week. I need to say something first, I interrupted. And I need you all to listen. They fell silent. 9 years ago, you destroyed me. You took everything I had, my marriage, my family, my home, my sense of safety, and you chose her over me. You watched it happen. You enabled it. And when I tried to heal, you asked me to forgive her, to understand, to be the bigger person. We know, my father said quietly. We've apologized. No, you haven't. Not really. You've said you made mistakes. That's not the same as understanding what you did. That's not the same as taking responsibility. My sister started to speak, but I held up my hand. I came back because I wanted to believe that saving your life would somehow make this better, that it would prove I was strong enough, good enough, better than all of you. But here's what I realized. Giving you my kidney doesn't make me strong. It makes me a doormat. It teaches my daughters that when people hurt you, you still have to save them. That family can destroy you and you still owe them everything. So you're not going to do it, my mother said, her voice breaking. You're going to let her die. I'm going to let the consequences of her choices be her responsibility, I said. I'm going to stop saving people who won't save themselves, who won't even truly apologize or change. I stood up, looked at my sister directly for the first time. You wanted what I had, so you took it. You didn't care what it cost me. And now you want what I have again. My health, my organ, my sacrifice. And you still don't care what it costs me. You're the same person you always were. And I'm done being your solution. My sister started sobbing. Please, I'll die. You're going to let me die. You made choices that led you here. I'm just refusing to fix them for you. I looked at my parents. You chose her over me every time it mattered. So now you get to deal with the consequences of that choice. Find another donor. Sell your house. Figure it out. But stop asking me to bleed for people who would never bleed for me. I walked toward the door. If you walk out, my mother said, we'll never forgive you. I turned back. Good. That makes us even. And I left. I left them in that hospital room, left them with their choices and their consequences, left them with the life they'd built by choosing wrong again and again. I drove straight to the airport, called Patrick from the gate. I didn't do it, I said. I'm coming home. Good, he said, and I could hear the relief in his voice. Come home, where you belong. And I did. The aftermath was quieter than I expected. No desperate calls, no hospital visits, no dramatic confrontations. Just silence. Complete, absolute silence from everyone in my old life. For the first few weeks, I waited for the guilt to come, but it never did. Instead, I felt lighter, freer. Like I'd finally put down a weight I'd been carrying my entire life. I thought saying no would destroy me, I told Patrick one night. And it saved me. 3 months later, I got an email from the cousin who'd first reached out. Your sister found a donor. Some distant relative agreed to get tested and was compatible. The surgery happened last week. She's recovering well. I sat with that information for a long time. She was okay. She'd survived. Not because of me, but despite me. The world hadn't ended when I said no. I felt relief. Not guilt, not regret, just pure relief. I didn't respond to the email. 6 months later, Patrick and I had our third child, a boy, born on a snowy January morning. We named him after Patrick's grandfather, surrounded him with love and real family. Life moved forward. My daughters grew, started school, learned to swim in the lake. They knew nothing about my biological family. To them, family was Patrick's parents who babysat and made cookies, Patrick's sister who took them to movies, the friends who became aunts and uncles by choice. I got promoted to nursing director. Patrick opened his own restaurant. Small, intimate, perfect. We bought a bigger house with a yard big enough for 3 kids, a garden, a dog. We built a life, a real life where love wasn't conditional, where support wasn't transactional, where family meant people who chose you every day. 2 years after I'd walked out of that hospital, I heard my sister had gotten married to that wealthy man. My parents were thrilled, posted photos all over social media of a lavish wedding I wasn't invited to. I looked at the photos once, saw my sister in white again, my parents beaming beside her, and I felt nothing. Not anger, not bitterness, just distant pity. I closed the browser and went to make dinner. 5 years later, 14 years after the original betrayal, I was at the grocery store with my youngest when someone called my name. My mother. Older, tired-looking, holding a basket with just a few items. "It's me," she said. My heart didn't race. I just looked at her and felt remarkably calm. "I know who you are. You look good. Your son, he's beautiful. Thank you. I think about you every day. Your father and I talk about what we lost, about how we got it all so wrong. Okay. Your sister, she's divorced now. Only lasted 3 years. He left her for someone else. She's back with us. Still struggling, still making poor choices. I'm sorry to hear that. We understand now what you tried to tell us, that we enabled her, that we failed you. We're sorry, truly sorry." I looked at her for a long moment. "I believe you're sorry, and I hope that understanding helps you make better choices, but it doesn't change anything for me. I have a family now, a real one, and I'm happy. So that's it. After everything, I chose myself. I chose the life I wanted instead of the family I was born into, and I don't regret it." My son tugged my hand. "Mama, can we get the cookies?" "Of course, baby." I looked at my mother one last time. "I hope you find what you're looking for, but it won't be with me." I walked away, finished my shopping, drove home, made dinner while our kids played in the backyard. That's the thing about choosing yourself. It doesn't fix the past or erase the pain, but it gives you a future. A real one where you're not constantly trying to be enough for people who will never see your value. My sister survived, found another donor, lived to make more poor choices, continued being exactly who she'd always been. My parents continued enabling her, continued their patterns, and I continued building something better. Now, when my daughters ask about grandparents, I tell them about Patrick's parents. When they ask about family, I show them the people who love them unconditionally. The last I heard, my sister was still with my parents, still struggling, still looking for someone to save her. And I'm here, in my house by the lake, with my husband, 3 children, and chosen family, living proof that you can survive betrayal, that you can walk away from toxicity, that you can choose yourself and build something beautiful from the ashes. My ex-husband is a footnote in someone else's story now. This is mine, and it's a good one. Not because I got revenge or because they suffered, but because I finally gave myself what I deserved: peace, love, and a family that chose me back. That's the real ending, and I'd choose it again, every single time.
Found out my husband was secretly sending his ex-wife monthly payments after alimony ended while I covered extra bills for years, so I pretended to lose my job and asked him for money. Then he called me lazy while still giving her money anyway. Hi everyone. So, things have happened in my life, and now I'm wondering if I took things too far. I just need an outside perspective because I feel like I might be the bad guy here, but I also feel justified. I don't know. You guys tell me. So, I, Megan, 32F, have been married to my husband, Nate, 37M, for a few years now. It's been mostly good. I work as a store manager, and he works as a welder. We both make a decent amount of money. It's not a lot, but we live comfortably. Neither of us wants kids, so that helps financially since we don't have to budget for things like daycare or saving up for a kid's college fund. We split all our expenses equally, which I always thought was fair, considering we both work full-time. Now, here's where things start getting tricky. Nate was married before to a woman named Clara, 36F. From what I understand, their relationship just kind of fizzled out. Nothing dramatic, no cheating, no big fights, just one of those cases where they got married young and then realized they weren't really right for each other. They ended things after 2 years. After the divorce, Nate was required to pay Clara alimony for a few years. This was all before I even met him, but he told me about it early on in our relationship. When we got married, he brought it up again, basically saying, "Hey, I'm still making alimony payments, so I might need you to cover a few more expenses until that's over." And I was fine with that. It made sense. We're a team, right? I didn't mind pitching in a little more while he took care of his past obligations. The thing is, those payments were supposed to end 2 years ago. As in, he should have been free of that financial burden for a while now. But for some reason, I was still the one covering more of the expenses. At first, I didn't really question it. I figured maybe he just needed time to adjust his finances, or maybe work had been a little slow. But then I started noticing patterns. One month, he said he had to send money to his family because his mom was struggling with bills. The next month, he said work had been slow, so he didn't make as much. Another time, it was a surprise expense like his truck needed repairs, or his tools needed replacing. There was always something. And every time, I was the one covering for it. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't struggling financially. I could afford to pay more. But after a while, it started to feel less like helping out and more like I was just carrying him. I mean, I work hard for my money too. I have my own financial goals. I wanted to save for vacations, maybe upgrade our home a little, build up my emergency fund. But every time I thought I'd have extra money to put towards something I wanted, I'd have to step in and cover something for Nate instead. I brought it up a few times, just casually, like, "Hey, didn't your alimony end a while ago? Shouldn't we be splitting things equally again?" And he'd always have an excuse. He wasn't trying to be sneaky about it, but he always had some reason why he just needed a little more time to get back on track financially. At first, I believed him. I mean, I love the guy. I trusted that he wasn't taking advantage of me. But after 2 years of this, I started feeling like a fool. I was paying more for everything: rent, groceries, utilities, and for what? His excuses weren't even that good anymore. He'd say things like, "Oh, I just didn't have time to move money around this month, or I'll pay you back next month." But next month would come, and it would be the same story all over again. This was until I found out from his bank statements that he was still giving Clara monthly alimony payments, even though their divorce settlement ended 2 years ago. At first, I thought I must have read it wrong. I stared at the statements, thinking maybe there was some mistake, or maybe I was missing something. But nope, it was clear as day. I saw regular payments going from his account to hers. It wasn't a one-time thing. It was every single month, like clockwork. I felt sick. I had been paying extra for so many things, thinking he was struggling or just getting back on his feet after years of alimony. I had never even questioned it that much. I just assumed we were in this together, and if he needed help for a while, I could step up. But now, I was looking at proof that he had been lying to me this whole time. I confronted him as soon as he got home. I didn't even try to ease into it. I just asked him straight up, "Why are you still sending Clara money?" He looked at me, completely caught off guard. He didn't even try to deny it, which, honestly, would have been worse. Instead, he just sighed and said, "Because I feel bad for her." I was floored. "What do you mean you feel bad for her?" That's when he told me that Clara was struggling financially. She had lost her job a while back and hadn't been able to find another one. She was, according to him, having a hard time making ends meet, and he felt guilty about how her life had turned out. I just stared at him. I was waiting for the part where he'd tell me this was temporary or that he had planned on telling me eventually, but that never came. He just looked at me like I was supposed to understand. I asked him, "What does this have to do with you? You guys got divorced years ago. You paid your alimony. You don't owe her anything." And you know what he said? "It's my money. I can do what I want with it." That honestly made me furious. Not even because of the money itself, but because of how he was talking to me. It didn't feel like I was his wife. It felt like I was some random person he was sharing an apartment with, like we were just two people splitting rent and minding our own business. No discussion, no consideration, just "it's my money, and I'll do what I want." I told him that Clara was a grown woman. A 36-year-old adult. She had plenty of time to figure out her life. Whatever happened to her was not his responsibility. And honestly, I didn't care. I wasn't trying to be mean, but why should I care about her when she wasn't my problem? She wasn't his problem either, but for some reason, he was acting like he still had to take care of her. He got defensive. He said it wasn't like he was sending her thousands of dollars, just enough to help her out. He said he felt bad because she had been with him when he was younger, and he had moved on and built a new life while she was still struggling. I told him that was a load of crap. She had the same opportunity to move on that he did. She could have saved money, changed careers, done whatever she needed to do. But instead, she was sitting around waiting for handouts. And worse, he was giving them to her. I reminded him that I had been paying more than my fair share of our expenses because I thought he needed time to get back on track after alimony. I reminded him that I had supported him through that because I thought we were a team. And now, here I was, working my off, paying extra bills, while he was just handing money to his ex-wife like it was no big deal. He didn't have much to say to that. He just kept repeating that it was his money. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like he didn't even care about how this affected me. I wasn't even mad about the money itself. I was mad about the lying, the secrecy, the complete disregard for our partnership. I had been putting in more than my share, making sacrifices, while he was out here playing savior to a woman he hadn't been married to in years. I asked him, "Would you have ever told me about this if I hadn't found out?" And he hesitated. Then he finally said, "I didn't think it was necessary." That was it. That was the moment I realized how little he respected me in this situation. He didn't think it was necessary. He didn't think I deserved to know. He thought he could just keep doing this, month after month, and that I would never find out. I didn't know how to act. Honestly, I wanted to sort of teach him a lesson. I don't know why I did this. Maybe I was being petty, maybe I was just fed up, or maybe I just wanted him to see how it felt to be on the other side of things. But either way, I decided I was going to do something about it. So, I talked to my boss and told her I had a family emergency and needed to work from home for a few months. She was really understanding about it, thankfully. She agreed, no questions asked. This was about 2 months ago. When I got home, I told Nate that I had been let go. I didn't make a big dramatic scene about it or anything, just casually dropped it into conversation. I told him that I had been laid off and that my last paycheck had already been processed. That I'd be looking for jobs but, for the time being, I didn't have any income. He was actually really sweet at first. He hugged me, told me everything would be okay, said that I was smart and hardworking and would find a new job in no time. He even offered to help me look for openings. That part honestly made me feel a little guilty, but I reminded myself that this was a man who had been lying to me for 2 years. A man who had let me pick up all the extra expenses while he funneled money to his ex-wife. A man who told me it's my money, I can do what I want. So I stuck to the plan. I stayed home, worked in secret, and told him I was job hunting. Then, after about 2 weeks, I started asking him for money for the bills around the house. These were bills I usually paid for, things like groceries, internet, utilities, my car insurance. At first, he didn't say much. He just handed me the money and said, "We'll get through this together." But then, after a few more weeks, he started getting a little frustrated. I guess it was starting to add up for him. He started asking me things like, "Do you really need all of this money? Or are you sure you can't cover at least some of it from your savings?" That's when I told him that, actually, a few months ago, I had to help my mom out with something. That I had dipped into my savings to take care of her. He was shocked. His face changed immediately. His whole attitude shifted. "Why didn't you discuss this with me?" he asked, like he was personally offended. And, oh my God, I wanted so badly to say, "It's my money. I can do what I want with it." I wanted to throw those words right back in his face. I wanted him to hear them and realize just how messed up it sounded. But I was playing the long game. So I just shrugged and said, "It all happened so quickly that I didn't get a chance to discuss it with you." His reaction was priceless. He was so annoyed. He kept asking questions, like, "How much did you give her? Why didn't you tell me sooner? What if we had an emergency?" And I just kept playing dumb, acting like it wasn't a big deal. Just like he did when I asked him why he was giving Clara money. He was clearly bothered by it, but he didn't push too hard at first. He still had a bit of that supportive husband act going on, telling me we'd be okay, that he'd cover things for a little while. But as the weeks went on, I could tell it was starting to get to him. Suddenly, he was the one feeling the weight of all the expenses. He was the one watching his account balance go down every month. He was the one having to sacrifice things. After a few days passed, I decided to take things a step further. I wasn't sure why I felt so strongly about proving my point, but something about the whole situation made my blood boil. I guess I wanted him to feel just a fraction of what I had been feeling for years. So, I asked him for money. Not for bills or necessities, but for my own personal expenses. This was something I had never done before. I had always been independent, always covered my own things without asking for a dime. Even when I was paying more than my fair share of the household expenses, I still made sure to take care of myself. I kept it small at first, just enough for little personal things. But then I asked for more, telling him that since I wasn't working, I needed support. If he was willing to send money to his ex-wife, surely he wouldn't mind helping his actual wife, right? Well, that's when the cracks really started to show. He completely lost it. He started going on and on about how I needed to get a job, how I was turning into someone lazy and irresponsible. He told me I couldn't just sit around doing nothing and expecting him to take care of me. He never saw Clara as lazy. He never told her to go get a job. He never questioned why a 36-year-old woman couldn't support herself. He just handed over the money without thinking twice. But me? His wife? The person who had been carrying most of the financial weight in our relationship for years? The second I was jobless, I became a burden. I asked him why it was different. Why it was okay for him to support his ex-wife but not his current wife. He got defensive, saying it wasn't the same thing. That Clara had no choice, but I did. That he was just helping someone who needed it. And that's when I snapped. I told him that it was a good thing I never actually quit my job, because clearly, he had no problem watching me struggle while he continued playing savior for his ex-wife. The second I said it, he froze. He looked at me, completely blindsided, like he had just found out I was an entirely different person. Then, the anger kicked in. He said I had crossed a line, that I had tricked him. He couldn't believe I had lied about something so important. I just sat there, letting him go off. Because here's the thing, he had been lying to me for years. He had been taking my money, letting me cover the majority of our expenses, all while secretly giving hundreds to Clara every month. And now, suddenly, I was the bad guy? He stormed out of the room, fuming, muttering about how I had taken things too far. And honestly, I don't know. Did I? Was I wrong for handling it this way? Was there a better way to make him understand how unfair this whole situation was? So, Reddit, Ida? Update 1. Well, things have escalated a lot. I wasn't expecting to post an update, but after everything that's happened, I feel like I need to. So, after the argument, things were tense between us. He barely spoke to me for days, and when he did, it was short and snappy. It was like he didn't even want to look at me. But I wasn't backing down. I wasn't going to be the one to apologize for his actions. He was the one lying to me, prioritizing his ex over me, and taking advantage of my willingness to support him. I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd take a step back and reflect. Maybe he'd realize how unfair he had been. Instead, I found out something even worse. A few days after our fight, I noticed he had changed the password to his phone. That was weird because he never used to lock it before. I wasn't the type to go through his stuff, but now I was suspicious. So, when he was in the shower one night, I grabbed his laptop, which I knew he rarely logged out of. And then I saw his email history with Clara. He had paid her rent again. I took screenshots of everything and confronted him when he got out of the shower. He tried to deny it at first, saying it was just temporary until she got back on her feet. Then he tried to say it was barely anything compared to what I made. I told him to cut the crap. He had been fully supporting another woman while telling me that he couldn't pay me. He had been lying to my face while playing victim when I asked for a little financial help. He admitted he had been helping Clara out because he felt responsible for her not having a job. Apparently, during their marriage, she had wanted to go back to school, but he had discouraged it, saying they couldn't afford it at the time. After their divorce, she struggled to find stable work because she didn't have a degree. So now, he was making up for it. I just stood there, staring at him. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He had no problem watching me struggle, but for Clara, he was bending over backwards because of guilt? I asked him if he still had feelings for her. He immediately denied it, saying it wasn't like that. He just wanted to do the right thing. I told him the right thing would have been not lying to me for years. I packed a bag that night and went to stay with my sister. I needed space to think. I wasn't about to sit in that house, paying for everything, while he played savior for his ex. The next day, he blew up my phone with messages, saying I was overreacting, that we could talk this out. Then he went back to being angry, saying I was the one who started this by tricking him. After taking some time to cool down at my sister's place, I finally decided to meet up with Nate and talk things through. I needed answers. More than that, I needed to understand how he thought any of this was okay. We met at a diner, and he already looked irritated, like I was the one who had wronged him. The moment I sat down, he started going on about how I humiliated him, how I set him up with my fake job thing. I let him rant for a minute before I cut him off. I told him to stop playing the victim. He wasn't the one being lied to for years. He wasn't the one who had to find out through bank statements that his spouse was secretly funding another household. Then he finally admitted something I wasn't expecting. He wasn't just helping Clara out of guilt. He was afraid of what would happen if he didn't. Apparently, Clara had been emotionally manipulative during their marriage, And after the divorce, she played the same games. She had hinted that she would end up on the streets if he didn't help. She constantly reminded him that if he had just let her go back to school, she wouldn't be in this mess. She made him feel like her struggles were all his fault. And for years, he believed her. I sat there, trying to process it all. It didn't excuse what he did to me, but for the first time, I could see how deep he was in this mess. I asked him why he didn't tell me. Why didn't he trust me enough to talk about it instead of lying? He looked down at the table and muttered, "Because I knew you'd tell me to stop." I told him that I needed time to figure out if this marriage was even salvageable. And honestly, I'm not sure it is. I want a partner, not someone who makes huge financial decisions behind my back. Not someone who puts another woman's well-being before mine. Not someone who only stops doing the wrong thing when they get caught. So, for now, I'm staying with my sister. I've started looking into separating our finances. And I'm slowly coming to terms with the fact that maybe this marriage wasn't built on the kind of trust I thought it was. Update 2. Hey everyone, I didn't expect to come back with another update so soon, but a lot has happened. I took some time to think after my last post, and I appreciate all the advice and support. I wanted to give you all an update on where things stand now. So, after I told Nate I wasn't coming home, he took it hard. At first, he was defensive, but over the next few days, his tone completely changed. He started calling and texting me, not to guilt trip me, but to really talk. He admitted that he had messed up, and he wanted to do whatever it took to fix things. I wasn't ready to jump back into anything, but I agreed to keep talking. We had long, hard conversations about everything. Why he kept sending Clara money, why he lied, why he didn't come to me first. And through all of it, I started to see something I hadn't before. Nate wasn't just manipulated by Clara, he was conditioned by her. Their marriage had been toxic in ways I never fully understood. She had made him feel like he owed her something, like he had ruined her life by leaving, and he carried that guilt for years. But the biggest thing is that he knew he couldn't keep living like this. After weeks of talking, he made a decision to cut Clara off completely. No more money. No more contact. Nothing. He sent her a final message saying that he wouldn't be making any more payments and that it was time for her to take responsibility for her own life. Then he blocked her number. He blocked her on everything. And just like that, the financial lifeline she had depended on for years was gone. Clara did not take it well. About a week later, Nate started getting emails from random accounts. Clara was losing her mind. At first, it was just the usual guilt tripping. How could you do this to me? You promised you'd always take care of me. You're leaving me to suffer. But when that didn't work, she escalated. She started showing up at his work. The first time, she caused a scene, screaming at him in the parking lot about how he had destroyed her life. His coworkers had to ask her to leave. The second time, security escorted her out. She even tried contacting me, sending long, unhinged messages about how I had turned him against her and ruined her stability. She claimed she was on the verge of losing her apartment and that it would be my fault if she ended up homeless. I didn't respond. I wasn't about to entertain her nonsense. Nate, on the other hand, had a huge reality check. Seeing her unravel like that made him realize just how toxic and manipulative she had been all these years. He admitted to me that he felt relieved to finally be done with her, even though part of him still felt guilty. But for the first time, he was putting us first. After seeing how committed he was to making things right, I agreed to move back home but with conditions. The first thing is full financial transparency. This means no more hidden payments, no more secret accounts. We both know where the money is going. Next is couples therapy. If we were going to rebuild trust, we needed help. He agreed without hesitation. Last one is boundaries with Clara. He had already cut her off, but I made it clear that if she ever tried manipulating him again, we would handle it together. It's been good. Better than I expected. I won't pretend it's perfect, and I won't say I've completely forgiven him yet. But he's proving that he's willing to change, and for now, that's enough for me to keep trying too. Thanks for sticking around, Reddit. Update 3. Hey, Reddit. It's been a while, but I figured I'd come back with a final update. A lot has changed, and honestly, I didn't expect things to turn out the way they did. So, it's been about 6 months since everything went down. Nate and I have worked hard to rebuild our marriage, and for the most part, things are good. Therapy helped a lot, especially with communication and trust. I won't lie. There were moments when I wondered if I could ever fully trust him again, but over time, he proved that he was serious about changing. Financially, things are much better now that he's not secretly funding his ex-wife's life. We've built up our savings, and for the first time in years, we feel like a real team. No more secrets, no more lies, no more feeling like I'm in a competition with a woman he divorced over a decade ago. After Nate cut her off, Clara spiraled. The guilt-tripping and manipulative emails turned into full-blown harassment. She used every trick in the book, calling from unknown numbers, showing up at his job, even messaging his family to try and get them to pressure him into helping her. At one point, she sent me an email begging me to convince Nate to help her. She claimed she was homeless, jobless, and out of options. She even said she was having a health crisis but couldn't afford medical care. I ignored it. Not my problem. But then, one day, she just disappeared. No more calls. No more emails. No more drama. At first, I thought she had finally given up. But then, through the grapevine, we found out what actually happened. Turns out, Clara had burned every bridge she had left. Friends, family, even the few men she had been stringing along, everyone got tired of her endless sob stories. When she ran out of people to manipulate, she tried one last desperate move, which was suing Nate for more money. She tried to claim that he had promised to support her for life and that by cutting her off, he had left her destitute. It was completely ridiculous, and the case got thrown out almost immediately. But the judge wasn't amused by her antics and warned her that if she kept harassing Nate, she could face legal consequences. That was the final straw. From what I heard, she packed up and moved to a different state, supposedly to start fresh. Last I checked, because yes, I peeked at her social media once in a while, she was trying to reinvent herself as a self-help guru. The same woman who spent years manipulating and emotionally blackmailing people is now preaching about independence and healing. The irony is unreal. Cutting Clara out of our lives was the best thing that ever happened to us. I don't think Nate fully realized how much she was draining him, financially, emotionally, and mentally, until she was gone. He's lighter now. I won't say I forgot everything that happened, but I can say that I forgive him. He worked to earn that. So, I guess this is the end of the story. Thank you all for supporting me through this.
She texted, "Staying at Sarah's tonight. Don't worry." But Sarah was sitting next to me at the bar. I replied, "Say hi to Sarah for me." The frantic calls that started coming through when she realized. Original post. I, 29 male, was having a regular Thursday at Murphy's bar with the crew. Nothing special, just unwinding after a long week. Brett from accounting was complaining about his fantasy team. I was nursing my second beer, and then Lauren, the Lauren who was supposedly out of town, walks in. Lauren's my girlfriend of almost 3 years. Correction, my girlfriend who lives in my apartment rent-free because she's building her photography business. The same photography business that's been about to take off for 18 months. She sits down next to Brett and immediately starts scrolling through her phone. Doesn't notice me at first because I'm in the corner booth. Then my phone buzzes. "Lauren, staying at Sarah's tonight. Project ran late. Don't worry, I'll be home tomorrow afternoon. Love you." I stared at the text, then at Lauren, who was literally 15 feet away, laughing at something Brett just said. Then back at the text. The thing is, Sarah, Lauren's best friend since college, was sitting right next to me. She'd been there for the past hour, telling us about her new job at some startup. I showed Sarah the text. Her face went from confused to horrified in about 2 seconds. "What the actual hell?" she whispered. I haven't seen Lauren in like 3 weeks, and I definitely didn't make plans with her tonight. My brain went into this weird autopilot mode. The hurt would come later. Right now, just cold calculation. I texted back, "Say hi to Sarah for me." Then I turned off my phone. Sarah grabbed my arm. "Dude, what are you doing?" Honestly, no idea yet, but I'm about to find out who she's really with. 20 minutes later, my phone was still off, but Sarah started blowing up. Lauren calling her, over and over. Then texts. "Why did you tell him? You're supposed to be my best friend. This is your fault." Sarah just stared at her screen, mouth open. She thinks I told you? She doesn't even know you saw my text response. Brett leaned over. "Bro, she's literally having a meltdown because she got caught in a lie. Turn your phone on. This is going to be good." Against my better judgment, I powered it back on. 67 missed calls. Yes, 67. All from Lauren. The texts were even better. "Ethan, please pick up. It's not what you think." Sarah's confused. "I am at her place." "Why are you doing this? Call me now. You're being ridiculous." The progression from panic to anger was almost fascinating. I took a screenshot of every single message and backed them up to cloud storage. Then I texted her back one word. Busted. Update 1. So that was Thursday night. It's now Saturday afternoon, and holy hell, The entitlement levels are off the charts. Friday morning, I woke up to find Lauren had let herself into the apartment. My apartment, where only my name is on the lease. She was sitting on the couch like nothing happened, scrolling through Netflix. "Hey, babe," she said casually. "We need to talk about last night." I stood in the doorway, coffee mug in hand. "Yeah, we do. Were you actually?" "I told you, Saris." "Lauren." Sarah was sitting next to me at Murphy's. I showed her your text. She had no idea what you were talking about. Her face did this thing where she tried to look confused, but just ended up looking guilty. She's covering for you? Did you threaten her or something? The audacity. The audacity. So, your story is that Sarah, your supposed best friend of what, 8 years, is lying to help me. Catch you in a lie you told me. You're twisting everything. Where were you? She tried tears. The whole performance, shaky voice, hands over her face. "I was at a photography workshop that ran late, and I didn't want you to worry. So I said I was at Sarah's because I knew you'd be okay with that." "What workshop? Where? Who ran it?" I don't remember the instructor's name. It was last minute. "Show me the receipt." "The registration email." "Anything." "I paid cash." "To a photography workshop in 2024. "Cash." "Sure." That's when her phone buzzed. She grabbed it quickly, but not quickly enough. I saw the name, Trevor. Everything clicked. Trevor, her client, who needed constant portfolio updates and emergency reshoot consultations. Trevor, who she'd mentioned maybe 6 times in the past 2 months. Who's Trevor? A client. "Show me his contract then. Show me the invoices you've sent him." She stood up, suddenly furious. "I don't have to prove anything to you. You're being controlling and paranoid. Get out." "What? This is my apartment. My name on the lease." "Get out. You can't kick me out. I live here." "No, you stay here." Big difference. And that arrangement just ended. "Ethan, you're overreacting." I grabbed her phone off the coffee table. She lunged for it, but I held it up. "Let me see Trevor's messages. If he's just a client, you've got nothing to hide." She went pale, then red, then tried to grab the phone again. I just held it higher. "That's private." "Yeah, that's what I thought. Get your stuff. You've got 2 hours. I'm not going anywhere. This is my home too. Actually, it's not. You don't pay rent. Your name isn't on anything. You're essentially a guest who's overstayed their welcome." Her mom called 20 minutes later. Becky, a woman who's never worked a day since marrying Lauren's dad, trying to lecture me about responsibility. You can't just throw her out. Where's she supposed to go? Becky, she lied about where she was last night and has been texting some guy named Trevor constantly. She can figure it out. That's just how millennials communicate. You're being insecure. I'm actually Gen Z, but okay. Not my problem anymore. Lauren spent the next hour packing while crying loudly and calling various friends. I heard her version of events. "He's kicking me out over nothing. I stayed at a workshop and he freaked out. He's always been jealous and controlling." No mention of the Sarah text. No mention of Trevor. Funny how that works. She left around 2 p.m. with 3 suitcases and her camera equipment. Slammed the door hard enough that my neighbor texted asking if everything was okay. Then started phase 2, the negotiation texts. "I left my favorite blanket. Can I come get it? Need my mail forwarded. We should talk about this like adults. You're really going to throw away 3 years over a misunderstanding?" I responded to exactly one. "The blanket will be in the building lobby by 6 p.m. Have someone else pick it up. Don't contact me again." Got a call from Trevor that night. Yes, Trevor himself. "Hey man, I think we should talk." "About what?" "How you been hooking up with my girlfriend?" "It's not like that. We're friends. Lauren said you two were basically over anyway." "Oh, that's interesting. Did she now? When did she say that?" "Like, a month ago." "Weird, because a month ago we were planning a trip together. But sure, basically over. You can have her, man. Good luck. I'm not trying to." Hung up. Blocked the number. Update 2. It's been 2 weeks and Lauren's entitlement has reached truly impressive levels. Like Olympic worthy. First came the financial awakening. Turns out when you don't pay rent or utilities for 3 years, moving out is expensive. Who knew? She started with the mutual friends. Tried to get them to convince me to help her out, with first month's rent somewhere. Because apparently I owed her that. The logic was that since I let her stay rent-free before, I should invest in her new place. When that didn't work, she tried accessing our shared streaming accounts. Except they were never shared. They're mine. I paid for all of them. Changed every password Sunday night. Monday morning, why can't I log into Netflix? Because you don't pay for it. We shared that. No, you used it. Big difference. This is petty. So, is lying about your location. She showed up at my apartment Wednesday night with her brother, Kyle. Kyle's this guy who thinks he's intimidating because he goes to the gym 5 days a week. He knocked on my door at 9 p.m. Yo, Ethan, need to talk. About what? About how you're treating my sister. She's broke, man. You know, she put everything into that business. You can't just cut her off. Kyle, she lied to me, cheated on me, and expected to keep living rent-free in MY apartment. What exactly should I be doing differently? Being a man about it. Helping her transition. I actually laughed. Being a man about it? She's 28 years old. She can figure out her own living situation. You're gonna leave her homeless? She's staying with your mom. Try again. Lauren pushed past Kyle into my doorway. I need my stuff. You took your stuff. Not everything. I have things here. Like what? My kitchen stuff. You mean the pots and pans I bought? The ones you used? Keep trying. The TV that I purchased 2 years ago. Receipts in my email if you want to see it. She started crying again. Real tears this time, I think. But here's the thing about crying. It works until it doesn't. It works until you realize the person isn't crying because they hurt you. They're crying because they're facing consequences. Ethan, please. I have nothing. Trevor won't even return my calls now. Oh, that's rich. So, Trevor ghosted you? The guy you lied to me for? Damn, that's rough. Don't be cruel. I'm not being cruel. I'm being honest. You made choices. Bad ones. Now you're dealing with it. I'll try to step in again. Bro, just give her some money to get started. No. Come on, man. I said no. She's an adult. She made her decisions. I don't owe her anything. They left after Lauren tried one more time to get into the apartment to look for her things. I told her I'd call the cops if she didn't leave. Kyle called me a bad name, and they took off. Thursday, got a call from my landlord. Someone, definitely Lauren, had called claiming she was on the lease, and I'd illegally locked her out. Landlord was cool about it, just needed to confirm she was never on the lease. Sent him the paperwork. Done. Friday, she tried the workplace card, called my office, and told the receptionist she was my fiancée. News to me, and needed to speak with me urgently about a family emergency. Boss pulled me aside. Your ex called. Claimed some emergency. I told her we can't transfer personal calls unless you approve. Everything okay? Yeah, just ex drama. She's mad I won't bankroll her life anymore. Say less. I'll let reception know she's not to be put through. Last night, Saturday, got a series of texts from unknown numbers. Clearly Lauren using friends' phones. You ruined my life. I hope you're happy. Everyone thinks you're a piece of trash. Sarah won't even talk to me anymore. Yeah, because you try to throw Sarah under the bus. My mom says you're going to regret this. Trevor's getting back with his ex because of you. That last one made me genuinely laugh. How is Trevor's relationship my problem? How is any of this my problem? This morning I woke up to find she'd posted some vague posting on social media. Didn't name me, but everyone who knows us would figure it out. When someone shows you who they really are during a breakup, believe them. Throwing someone out with nowhere to go and cutting them off financially is abuse. Period. The comments were divided. Her friends, OMG, are you okay? What a monster. You deserve better, queen. My friends and people who actually knew the situation. Maybe don't cheat, then play stupid games. Didn't you lie about where you were? Sarah even commented, interesting take from someone who tried to use me as an alibi for cheating. Then deleted it, probably to avoid more drama. I'm not responding to any of it. Not dignifying it with a response. The people who matter know what really happened. Everyone else? Not my problem. Update 3. Final update because this needs to be closed out. It's been about 6 weeks since everything imploded. Lauren's gone full scorched earth. After the social media posts didn't get her the sympathy she wanted, she escalated. Hard. 2 weeks ago, I got a letter from some attorney. Not like a real firm, just some solo practitioner she probably found on Google. Demand letter claiming I owe her $15,000 for financial contributions to household during our relationship. The breakdown was wild. $8,000 for cooking and household management services, $4,000 for emotional labor and support, $3,000 for career sacrifices to support my growth. I literally laughed out loud in the parking lot reading it. Sent it to my cousin Derek, who's an actual attorney. He called me 20 minutes later, also laughing. This is the dumbest thing I've ever read. She's trying to charge you for being a girlfriend. What career sacrifices? Her photography business that never made money. Apparently that counts. Tell you what, I'll write a response for free just because this is entertaining. But seriously, she has no case. You don't owe a romantic partner back pay for existing in a relationship. Derek's response was beautiful. Professional, but basically said, my client owes your client nothing. They were in a romantic relationship, not an employment arrangement. Any financial support provided was a gift, not a loan. If your client pursues this matter, my client will countersue for 3 years of back rent at market rate, plus utilities. We estimate this amount to be approximately $54,000. Please advise if your client wishes to proceed. Never heard from that lawyer again. But Lauren wasn't done. She started showing up places. Not at my apartment. I think Kyle finally convinced her that was a bad idea, but places she knew I'd be. The coffee shop near my office. The grocery store I always go to. The bar where this whole thing started. Each time, same script. We need to talk. You owe me closure. This isn't fair. I just walked away every time. Didn't engage. Let her look unhinged to everyone watching. Last week was the final straw. She somehow got my new girlfriend's number. Yeah, I started seeing someone. Vanessa works in the tech industry, has her life together. We met at a work mixer, hit it off, been taking it slow. Lauren sent Vanessa a series of texts. He's going to do the same thing to you. He's controlling and abusive. He threw me out with nothing. Just warning you what you're getting into. Vanessa forwarded them all to me with, your ex seems stable. I finally broke my silence. Sent Lauren one text. Contact me or anyone in my life again, and I'm filing for a restraining order. I have documentation of everything. This is your only warning. That was 4 days ago. Silence since. Got coffee with Sarah last week. First time we'd really talked since that. Night at Murphy's. She looked exhausted. Lauren called me 30 times the first week, she said, screaming about how I betrayed her, how I should have lied for her, how I destroyed her relationship. I'm sorry you got dragged into this. Don't be. I should have seen it coming. She'd been weird about Trevor for months. I asked her about it once, and she bit my head off. Said I was being judgmental. So she was definitely with him that night. Oh, absolutely. She told me later, before she realized you were serious about the breakup, that Trevor had gotten them a hotel room. She thought it was romantic. Thought she could juggle both of you. Did she think I'd never find out? Sarah shrugged. I think she thought you'd never leave. That you'd always be there to pay for everything while she did whatever she wanted. The entitlement is honestly impressive. Her mom's the same way. Becky's been calling me too, try to convince me to talk to you. Says you're being cruel. That Lauren's suffering. She made her choices. That's why I told Becky. She didn't like it. As for where Lauren is now, heard through the grapevine, and by grapevine, I mean Kyle's girlfriend who still follows me on Instagram, that she's living with Becky full-time. The photography business is on hold. She got a part-time job at some retail store, but complains about it constantly. Trevor? Gone. Apparently once he realized Lauren wasn't the low-maintenance side piece he thought she was, he bailed. Blocked her on everything. She tried to show up at his place once, and he threatened to call the cops. The mutual friends have mostly chosen sides at this point. Some stuck with her, believe her version where I'm the villain. That's fine. They're welcome to deal with her drama. The friends who matter, who actually knew both of us, are still around. Vanessa thinks the whole story is insane. She really thought she could just lie and you'd never figure it out? She thought I was too comfortable to ever leave. That I'd rather stay in a bad relationship than start over. That's depressing. It was. But I'm good now. Better, actually. And I am. The apartment's quieter. Cleaner. Cheaper. Honestly, now that I'm not subsidizing someone else's life. I've been sleeping better. Eating better. working out consistently for the first time in years. There's no dramatic finale here. No moment where Lauren realizes her mistakes and apologizes. No redemption arc. She's still out there, probably telling people I'm terrible, probably blaming everyone but herself. That text, though, "Say hi to Sarah for me," still makes me smile. For words that unraveled 3 years of lies in real time. Watching her panic when she realized she'd been caught. The frantic calls. The escalating desperation. People always say, trust your gut. My gut knew something was off for weeks. I just didn't want to believe it. But that night at Murphy's, when I saw that text and Sarah was right there, crystal clear. So yeah, she stayed at Sarah's that night, and it destroyed everything she thought she had locked down.